Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crust with the gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. The Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. The Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. The Game Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crust with the gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound.
Yo.
We right with y'all. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. This is a big episode.
Yeah.
It's the original cast,
Yes.
It's us.
the creme de la creme.
It's us.
You know what I'm saying? And this is the last episode before next time we see y'all. It would already be the new year.
Yes.
So welcome
indeed.
in. I'm your host, Golden Crust 200, aka Mr. 200, and this is our last episode of this year.
Yes, indeed.
So I'm kicking on over to
Everyone's favorite DJs and co-host of the Game Lounge, CJ the DJ, and the queen of the show.
Brother Lady Monet, what's going on, chat?
Yes, indeed. Yes,
So
indeed.
where do we start? This is big because this is the episode where we talk about.
We recap a couple
We
things.
can recap how it's been for the year, not just for the lounge, for us, individual. See what's going on. Do we do resolutions or we just keep pushing?
We can do those too.
I mean, for me, I guess I'll start. I mean, it's just been a blessed year. As the host of the lounge, I just want to say I appreciate the both of y'all. Y'all been rocking with us for the whole year, and we've been on the up and up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed.
So I do appreciate y'all, and hope next year. I know y'all got my back next year, and we still here. We still gonna push.
And we appreciate you keeping us around. We be like, yeah, I got 500 followers, and we don't need those guys.
CJ, who?
I don't need those guys anymore. I appreciate you having us
And
around.
also,
and not just having me, but having my
of
wife
course,
as well.
let me say this before I pass the baton. It's been a whole year. The year's about to end, and we're about to welcome little Co Xaviers to the world.
Yes, little Co Xavier is just coming. And while we on the subject, Co's in the room.
Co's in the room.
What's up, Bob? Co's.
Just want to say 10 fingers, 10 toes.
Yes, indeed. We actually did go to the doctor, and we did see that.
So let's pass it on.
Yes, we did see that. So, little Kosabi but my mini me is coming. I have 2 girls already. This will actually be my first boy. So, and with me being named after my dad, of course, I'm gonna name him after me. So it's gonna be the third.
Keep the legacy
So
going.
Kosabi is the third. It's a blessing. It's such a blessing. I can't. My feelings is like pouring over the cup at this moment. And can I say how many months you are? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So she's 5 months, and we got pretty much 4 more months to go. I can't wait to see him.
Time's flying. I can't wait to see
I
it.
can't wait to see him. I'm dying. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go in the store to buy little football stuff, basketball stuff,
Catch that
little
little
toys,
toes.
little anime stuff, toys like the boy toys, like Hot
Oh,
Wheels,
it's
and
old for you.
oh my god.
Training him for Goku.
No. He's
I'm
gonna be a
ready,
Superman.
man.
guy.
I'm ready.
Trust me, he's gonna be a
Nah,
Superman guy.
He's gonna like Superman.
No, he's
but
gonna be a Superman guy.
He's gonna like Superman.
Not with Uncle GK in his face. Clark Kent.
right.
6 feet both crazy is crazy.
So-
Down to the low. That's too much.
Yeah, I mean that would have been great for me. I ain't gonna hold you, Kosa. If his birthday was in August, with me, my birthday being in August too, I would like, ooh.
What month did you look? We looking at
May,
Okay.
late April, early May.
Yeah.
Let's rule for that April.
Right. We,
Right.
cause I know.
Me and Twin over
Yeah.
there, that's not here right
he
now.
said the same thing. He was like, he got to be in April with us. Yeah.
And GK niece is also April.
Yeah, April too. All right.
Still gonna sprinkle a little April love.
Sprinkle some April juju over here. Yeah.
Anything you like to say, Miss Queen?
I'm just looking forward to the new year, new stuff for the game now.
Yes.
Being healthy, bigger things next year.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
What about you guys?
Yep.
You guys have any
Yeah,
New
what's
Year's
your
resolution? How has 2025 been treating y'all? You guys ready to be done with 2025? You excited for 2026? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a lot of people in the room right now too. Retro's in, drop a bomb for Retro. He was first.
Oh yes.
Appreciate the biddies from Retro.
Retro, appreciate you.
Gifting subs, actually.
Gifting
My bad. It's not
subs.
even biddies. Drop another bomb for Retro. Gifting subs. Two bombs. Kitty's in the room, of course. We know
Mhm.
Kitty's always in here. Kitty, I still got my lovely cup. Yes,
You
indeed.
already
Yes,
see that
indeed.
right there.
Dirty Dan's in the room. What up, Dirty Dan?
Dirty.
Drop a bomb for Dirty Dan. Koza, as we said, is in the room. And more people, We'll see them
Appreciate all y'all.
when they pop
Appreciate
in
all
and say
y'all.
something.
Cool to say 2026 be a banging year. Big blessed this year. Good.
Yes.
Yes. I got this. What was it?
So he's Koza say, I got the generic resolutions.
Dirty Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry. 30 days, and I got the generic resolutions of a workout and save money.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yes, indeed.
That's a
yes,
good one.
indeed.
I'm on that boat too. Shit. I'm trying to save all the money.
Yes.
Right.
Trying to save the money so we can take time for ourselves and do some nice things.
Yep.
And buy some nice things.
Buy some nice things would be very nice.
Right.
Always bills, man.
Not always giving it to
Always
somebody
these
after you
goddamn
enslaved
bills,
yourself,
yo.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, damn, I've been working, man. No, got the hours coming. Bills are like, yeah.
Sit
Well,
down.
we still here, player.
Mm-hmm.
We still here.
They waiting on you at the
You
door
say
like,
you're trying to quit nicotine next year. Push for some clean. Yeah, you could do it.
I'm trying to push for the no weed too.
I believe you can do it. Koza has
You gotta
actually
start
stopped
small with
smoking
weed.
actual weed, so it's like
Well,
and
we
big
don't
up to
know
that
if
for
you
sure.
smoke weed a lot, you can't just go for the push. You gotta slow it down.
That's
Yeah.
my thing. I want to be
Take
off
it
the
back
beat.
some.
Herb, my man Herb is in the building, y'all. OG Wiz.
OG Wiz in the building, drop a
Born
bomb
day,
OG
New Year's
Wiz.
Eve. Wow. Turned 60. Wow.
Wow,
Happy
big
birthday.
6'5".
Shout out to you, OG
Yes,
Wiz.
yes indeed. Happy
Happy
B-Day. Wishing you
B-Day.
more life,
Wow.
more health, and more wealth, OG Wiz. My man. Can't wait to get him back on the show.
Oh, he will be back.
You got to come on back on this
Yeah,
side.
we gotta come drop some knowledge on us.
Yeah. Come back to the game now. You got a nice studio now. Nice
Yeah, we
studio
done moved
200.
on
We
up.
moving
You
on
gotta
up
come
now.
visit,
So
you know what I'm
you got to
saying?
come and hang out with us, OG Wiz.
So I got a couple things we want to get into.
Yeah.
First, let's get into something very special. Our guy Retro,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you remember when we first were doing the Zelda thing.
Yes.
Retro said he was gonna send me something,
Okay.
but this big old box showed up.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So shout out to my boy Retro,
Yeah. Definitely shout out to Retro. Yeah.
who sent some items for us all the way from Norway,
Norway.
all the way from Norway.
Yep.
So let's pop the box open.
Yep. All the.
Big box right there that you walk past.
Oh, my man.
Oh boy.
It is a big ass box. I had stubbed my toe on it on the walking in.
Big ass box showed up, y'all. It's like, yo.
This how big the box is.
Yeah.
This that big.
Appreciate you, her. Her sound like the
Goddamn.
background. Okay,
Goddamn.
so here at the Game Lounge,
The back. The
we've
back.
been privileged enough to meet some amazing people.
Yes.
Yes.
And look at this, the last episode of the year, we're gonna open up some gifts. Have you?
Definitely want to put some notoriety on Koza. He said he's been clean 4 months, no weed, 5 years, no alcohol, 5 years, no lean. So definitely drop a bomb for that. Give it up for my guy,
5
man.
years, that's crazy. Definitely happy to hear that, Coach. For real though. That's my guy, right? That's a stand-up dude.
Mhm.
I fucks with him.
And Kitty just said I need to work out and lose weight. I like that one too. Drop
Hey,
a bomb for that.
Even GK's been getting out of shape, yo.
Man,
Even GK's
I'm
been
just
getting.
trying to tell you,
I
like
stepped
I'm
on the
pregnant.
scale
Like
for
I'm
the-
5 months in here.
For the first time of year, the scale was tipping 159.
Mm.
I'm usually like low 150s.
Mm.
That's a good bit of weight that crept up.
Yeah.
So I gotta start.
Eating a little bit more vegan than you should.
Yeah. Gotta start getting on my. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to dig on in this box that Retro sent us. Retro, we thank you from the Game Lounge.
So we just go slide on by and say, I'm just excited to dig all in the box.
Dig-
Why you doing that?
That's not an A.
Hey, yo.
With digs in boxes. You know?
Pause,
Why is that a pause, though? Ain't no damn pause. You gonna jump on in there.
Oh my God.
We're not starting this yet.
You started it. All I said was we gonna dig in the box.
Mhm.
That's all.
I'm dead. Talking about it.
That's all I said. That's all I said. All right, so
Oh, man.
let's
What
pop
did he
on in there and
say?
see
What did he say?
see what Retro got for me.
Open it up. Open it up. Fancy stuff. Good old stuff.
You
Let's
got
see
stuff
what it
here, you got
is.
names on it. Okay.
Nut 215. Drop a bomb for Nut 215.
Oh, my boy Nut popped out again.
Yeah.
What's good goody with your nut? Okay.
All right.
There's quite a bit of stuff in here, man.
It is quite. Jesus Christ. That's why I was
Think
heavy.
This came off. Well, it says to CJ.
To me, Metro, my man.
All right, well,
To
shit.
me, let me see. What?
Got some weight on it.
It got some weight. Is this for
Look,
me?
look, had your name on it.
Was it on my name? Okay, yeah, that's mine. Get me here. God damn, give me here. Oh man,
Kind of heavy.
kinda heavy. Welcome to Apple like a kid on Christmas.
Yeah.
Give it here. What is this? Chat, what is this?
Motherfucker, what is it?
I don't know.
Oh, no, yeah.
Oh,
Oh wait, no.
you gotta save it.
I
You
gotta
gotta
save it.
you gotta-
I almost screwed it up
Yeah.
this time. Oh.
Oh, that's fire.
A deluxe edition.
Can I see it?
Undisputed Street Fighter.
Let me see.
No, don't put your finger in
Come
here.
on,
Don't put your dick in the box.
Ooh, this is lit.
Oh,
It's a
that's
whole.
fire, man.
Check it out.
Oh,
It's a whole book.
That's crazy.
Nah, that's super dope.
Oh,
That's for you.
man, look at this.
Got another one here.
And real quick, chat, all of the reuse in the back. You got the Ryu 1 here.
Yep.
All the way up.
Right
All
here
the way
to
up.
2 here to the Alpha there, the third strike there, then another. Which one is that one? That's the SNK joint, the Capcom SNK. Then to the Ultra Street Fighter. Oh my god,
That's fire.
this is so fire, bro.
That's fire.
Thank you, Retro man. Drop a goddamn, but no, Retro gets a Superman. Goddamn it, he gets a goddamn Superman. That was too
That was on
fire.
time.
Yeah, you little.
that was too fire. That was. This is hard. This is going on the top of my arcade. You don't understand.
Oh yeah, you got the
This
perfect spot
going
for
right
that.
up on the top of my arcade. It's
Mhm.
gonna sit out like this. And every now and then I'm gonna flip it over and let this part of this show too. Oh my god. It's heavy too. Let me just
I mean, so what's for me then? You got all of that.
Yeah, let's check his out.
Oh we wait on you. We wait on you. Oh, this is something else in here.
Oh, there's more in there?
But wait,
I knew you was gonna say
there's
that.
more.
You still there?
Oh, look
Oh,
at
that's
this.
fire. What
It's
the
an
fuck?
actual cutout arcade.
Oh, that's
Oh,
fire.
God.
Oh,
What
I
the
like that.
fuck?
No, that's Kendall right here.
this is.
You got the you win, you
oh,
lose. You win, you
yeah.
lose.
This is
Check that out.
This is one of those paintings, those Leonardo da Vinci paintings
Oh,
of
shit.
the Ryu King flip it upside down with the shapey
fucking
shape stuff.
fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is hard. And look at the Dawson. The Yoga Flame.
Oh no.
The Yoga Flame is crazy.
Let me see
Chad.
the yoga flame. Oh, he looking godly.
Yeah,
Right?
look at the Yoga Flame.
Right.
Then you got the whole squad with Zangief and Blanca
Oh,
arm wrestling.
that's the old school squad.
The original.
Let me see that shit.
You even got Bison in the cut cheering them on. They friends right now.
Ooh, Blanca.
Oh my god.
That's fire.
You don't have Ken on?
The OGs on there though. Kim probably getting a drink.
He paid for the
He
drinks.
paid for all the other festivities. Why not, right?
Nah, that's super dope.
Oh man, I can't wait to go home and put this little box in the retro. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Once I
That's super
craft
dope.
this whole thing together,
That's
this
gonna be
arcade go this way. Once I craft this all together, I'm gonna be going to send you a picture of
That's
that.
dope
bro.
as fuck.
Appreciate
Nah,
that,
that's
man.
dope as fuck.
Ooh-wee.
Alright,
I
let's see
don't
what
think
we
it gets
got.
any better than this.
Yeah, maybe there's more.
Okay, this is also for CJ.
Oh, it's for me too.
So it's the CJ box.
Oh,
This is crazy.
well, don't be a hater. Don't be a hater.
Put it to the side.
Right here. Thank you. Ooh,
What's that?
It's a bag.
Oh shit.
This
that's
might
fire.
be for you.
Somebody signed it.
Oh, who signed the bag?
Omega 6.
Omega 6 bag. Who signed the
That's
bag?
what's up.
That's what's up. Got show chat.
It got some of the peoples on here. Look at that. Chat peep game, y'all. Omega
Said signed
6.
by the director of Majora Mask.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Well, that's
the signature right
The
there.
That's
signature.
what's up. That's
The
fire.
signature.
It's
Wait, let the
alright.
light catch it. Wait a minute.
on my side.
Look at the signature, y'all, right here. The scribbles. Yeah, the scribbles. Oh, this is too fire,
Oh, they said
bro.
that's real heat right there. Now that's lit.
Retro, I
That's lit.
appreciate. Yeah, it dropped a goddamn bomb. This is-
Oh my god. That's from the newest game that they
Okay,
worked
so-
on.
Oh my god, from the newest game, Omega 6. I'm definitely going to go look at Omega
This is
6.
just box stuffing.
Oh man, Retro, thank you, brother. I
Thank you,
appreciate you,
same.
man. I
There you
appreciate
go.
that. I think you wrote something.
Uh-uh.
No. Oh wait. Was it supposed to be?
Uh-uh.
Oh, one whole thing?
Box stuffing.
Box stuffing. Okay, yeah, well. Oh no. Yep, box stuffing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Boy.
What is that?
That look heavy too.
That looks heavy too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm gonna keep my fingers off of your stuff too.
Yeah, you stay over there.
Stay over here. Ooh. An Xbox 360 with the Akuma symbol on it. Oh my god.
Check it out, chat.
The Xbox 360. What is
Check it
inside
out,
the
chat.
Akuma box? What's in the Akuma box?
I can't get it over.
You gotta slide it outside.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like the way the box looks.
Oh, the Akuma box.
Oh shit, it's all
Ooh, that
it's
looks
all
fire.
velvety.
What is it, velvet?
Yeah, stupid.
Oh, the box.
That look fire. Yes, you feel that?
That's the
That's
pen.
top quality.
That's
right
top
there.
quality
That's top
right
quality.
Quality.
That's that shit right there. Yeah. Other side, from the front. Yeah.
there. Oh shit.
Lift that up there. Oh my god. I peeked already.
Nosy
I
nigga.
peeked already.
He looking.
Hey.
Oh my goodness.
Jay, what's up, Jay? Dropping bomb for Jay popping in the room. We just experiencing some gifts from my guy Retro.
We got a book.
Oh, the Akuma book.
We got tribute art.
Oh,
This is just the beginning.
that's just the beginning. It gets better.
It gets.
I saw better.
Oh.
Come on, man.
That shit look
Your side
Yeah,
shows better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that right there, Jay? Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, that right there.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, get a little closer.
We
yeah.
stumped out today.
Yeah. The Yoga Flame and a couple of the Street Fighter peoples right there. Yeah. It's hard to show y'all with the
Retro.
glare there.
Retro
He
outdid
went
himself.
out. Yeah, he went all out.
He outdid himself.
Yeah.
And we got the.
Oh, look at the
First of all, let me
bison.
show everybody the
The
inside
bison
of the
is
box.
Oh, that bison
Oh,
is
look.
tough.
Oh.
Come on, man. Look at the bison, man.
That's disgusting.
Come on.
Then they got the Hugo next to
the
it.
Hugo, Third Strike Hugo.
That's nasty work.
That's crazy.
That's nasty work.
No fear, I want bison.
But look. We got the official 25th anniversary collection certificate.
Oh, we get the official
This is
tissue
official.
certificate. Let me see. Let me show the certificate. Cause it ain't real right if the emblem ain't showing.
You can't really see it.
Oh, god damn it. Aha, gotcha. Right there. Ah, chat, just catch it from the glimpse side right there. Yeah,
Like too bright.
yeah, light too bright.
Oh,
Yeah,
look
but that
at-
emblem, you see that
Damn,
emblem
there's more
right there?
in here,
Yeah,
bro.
get that back so you can look for it.
Fancy.
There's more in here, bro.
It's a lot more.
Yeah, get on in there, man. Get on in there.
Watch this shit right here.
Let me see.
Watch this shit right
Let
here.
me see.
Watch this shit right here.
Oh boy, what you waiting on?
Oh my goody gumdrops, nigga.
Oh,
Oh my goody
That's like-
gumdrops.
Oh
That's fire.
shit.
I think it's a light under it. I'm gonna turn it
Oh gosh. Show it to the people. No, you gotta lift it up. Just lift it up a little bit. Let it see on the box. Yeah.
Oh my.
on. Turn the
Yeah.
light on at the bottom.
Oh.
That bottom light's
That's if it has batteries in it.
Oh,
No, it's not batteries yet.
that's
Look at that.
fire.
Oh my
That's fire.
god.
Put it on your side.
You gotta put
Yeah,
them
you
up
got-
there with.
you gotta-
He gotta go on
Yeah,
display.
Yeah, we gotta put them up on the display. The full sure you can move.
Let me
Oh
see.
my god.
He said it was limited to 30K, 15K to PS3, and 15K to Xbox.
Oh my god, you got one of the
And
15K.
I got one of the 15K.
The straight, but it's crazy for the show you can.
Yo, that's dope as fuck.
Oh my god.
That's dope as fuck. That's dope as fuck.
All you need is some batteries.
Slap the batteries in there, it's gonna look all good. It was limited 30K, 15 and 15.
Retro. I don't know what to say.
This is fire.
Yeah.
I got the whole music soundtrack.
Wow.
Of Third Strike? Oh, of the original games, all of them.
All of them.
Oh,
All
so
the
we got
soundtracks
you got
are
the
in this.
soundtrack for
Soundtracks.
Street Fighter, then Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Yeah,
And it keeps going.
The
There's more of them.
The
Alpha.
Alpha, yeah.
The whole series.
And then we got this right here, the Third Strike.
Oh
So
my
here we go,
god.
yo.
Oh my god.
Yeah, man.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
more.
man.
There's
You
still
got-
more.
But you gotta put them back. You gotta put them back in the right order.
That's what's
That's the
up.
Third Strike, yeah. He's still going, Chad. Like, mind you.
No, there's more in here. Watch this.
Oh.
The game unopened.
Street Fighter
Wow.
Cross Tekken and Super Street Fighter 4 unopened.
You said Street Fighter Cross Tekken?
Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
I ain't never heard of that.
You did hear that? Remember I had it?
Did I?
Yeah.
Let me see.
Street
You
Fighter.
That's not
what?
easy to find.
I had the
That's not
I
easy
had
to
both
find.
the on the
That's
the
not easy
Vita
to find,
and
bro.
on the
No,
the P
right.
P
It's the arcade edition.
P3.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
Oh my god. There's more.
I know.
There's more.
I see.
Nosy.
I see.
That's PlayStation.
This is-
Anniversary film collection.
Oh, this the film collection, y'all. Check it out. Still in a plastic though. It's crazy.
There's more.
He said broke up the Mary Poppins box.
Yo, just kick it. Yo.
Just keep bullshit out. Oh, look at the back. The back got some nice little images and stuff in the back. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
There's more. There's more in this
There's
box.
more.
We got the official.
Is that a belt? Get the fuck out of here.
Oh, shit.
That's the official black belt.
The official black belt
That's crazy.
with the kanjis on
Oh
it.
my fucking god.
Yeah.
The official black belt. Yeah, drop a bomb for the official black. So you now are officially a black belt.
I'm a ninja.
Somebody act the fuck up. You can Hadouken them
you
legally
can't
and then show them the
Show them a
certification.
certificate from Norway.
Right.
From Norway.
Bro, this is crazy.
Wow. Retro.
My man.
Oh my fucking god.
So you can legally Hadouken somebody? I've been trying to, but I know legally I can't do it outside.
Watch this though. There's more in the box.
Oh my god.
It's not done. Space holder.
Space holder.
Might be a space holder. Space holder.
Space holder, yeah.
Got a nice Dragon Ball Son Goku versus Piccolo.
Oh wee.
Oh, that's lit.
Oh wee.
That's lit.
Retro said, I said I got you.
You know what, my
BK
man?
Jeff in the building, yeah. Drop a bomb for BK
Jeff?
Jeff. Yeah. Oh, man. For me? Don't mind if I do. Oh.
I appreciate you, my guy.
Oh,
Listen,
my
I know
man.
he's the Goku guy.
Yeah.
Retro, he's the Goku guy.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be selfish.
Yeah, you gotta spin the box. Spin
You
the
saw when I
box.
pulled it out.
He
He was
loved
like, ooh.
He was loved that. Y'all soon as you seen him.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yes.
We
Yes,
got
indeed. Thank
a
you, man. Appreciate
collection.
that.
This is fire.
What's that?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, this is a lit piece of collectible right
be
here.
Careful with that.
No. Check this out, bro.
Who's that? Oh. I've seen her before.
From the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Right.
That's a collector.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen her
That's a
before. If you guys are
collection
familiar with Dungeons
piece
and
right
Dragons.
here. Gotta drop a bomb for that.
Yeah. This is a collectible piece for sure.
Gotta drop a
I think
bomb
we
for
all
that.
will know the original guys in the back, the Hank the Bobby.
Yeah.
And whatnot. Yeah. But oh man.
Ain't she black? Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Got you the Dungeons and Dragon
You
Wonder
got
Woman.
one more thing in here. You got the little.
You can collect your zennies in that.
Yeah. What is this? Oh, shit.
Oh.
I remember what he said this was.
Oh my God, that's PlayStation 1.
Yes.
Remember he said he was going to send it
The
signed.
signed
Yo,
Wow.
collector's edition.
this right here,
You hold that one close.
That's
this
fire.
right here, chat, this
Oh
is
my
no joke.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he even let this out of his house.
Right, because that's PlayStation 1.
This is,
Yeah.
That's collectible.
That definitely.
nigga, do you know
drop
what this is?
Drop a bomb. Yeah, you ain't gotta tell me. I know what's up.
This
I
is
know what
si-
that is.
My nigga.
That's crazy.
I know what that is, bro.
Are you? Let me.
Pop it open.
It's in there.
The CD
shiny.
is
And it's
still in.
shiny too.
I smell the book. I
Oh
smell the book. That's how you know it's still new.
God,
You can't
chat.
say
This
that.
is the Street Fighter collection that was signed. Retro, drop his name.
Yes, this is hard.
Wow. If that's not a collection piece,
Yeah, that is.
And as they say in the back of it, it says Street Fighter, Super Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Yeah. That's the collector's edition
Yeah,
that
that's the
goes.
name. The composer, Yoko.
Yoko Shimura.
Shimomura.
Oh my God.
You got
I'm
the
gonna have that
Shimomura
framed.
sign?
Yeah,
I'm gonna have that
you
framed.
to.
I'm gonna have that
You
framed.
got the sign Shimomura.
I'm gonna have that
bro?
framed. I'm gonna have that framed.
That's what's up. PlayStation 1.
Yo,
The original.
the original.
recipe.
Yo, shout out to you, Retro.
You treat that with care.
You treat this with care. I didn't finish beating Zelda for you yet, but we're getting there. Clap it up for my man, Retro.
Yes. So appreciative.
Clap it up for my
So
man,
appreciative.
Retro. Also, shout out to Retro.
Yes. Take some time out. Drop a goddamn bomb. Cause he hit us with the meme. That was
Yo, that shit
crazy.
was crazy.
It was Hadouken after
hit us
Hadouken
heavy.
after Hadouken.
Nah, he just straight hit us with a super.
This is crazy, bro. It's
Retro.
hot.
I don't know what to say, Retro. Appreciate you. You the man. And goddamn it, from here, from us to the Game Lounge, we love you, Retro. And the boy made good music.
Yeah.
Yes, great.
And the boy
Oh, I'm
made great
always
music.
bumping it.
He be.
I'm
Facts.
always, but every morning I'm telling you, I'm taking my kids to school. Well, for the last couple of days, I couldn't bump it in the morning because the kids out of school for the holidays. So I couldn't bump it every morning at that time. But man, every time I was going to school, I was bumping that shit, bro.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, so
Put that back there. I'll make it 6. Put that back.
let's get into some fun.
Put the Goku back there too.
Put the Goku back there. Put the Goku. Let's get into some fun.
All right.
I got one question. What is a white person song that is hood certified? I was going to
Walking fast, it's as fast, and I'm home now.
hood niggas be busting that.
That's because
And because of Terry Crews,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
why that song is such a big hit.
If not that one, you got another one?
No.
Everybody.
Oh, some NSYNC? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Rock your body.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, that's one of them right there. I ain't gonna lie right there. That's it right there. They got
It's
some.
it's such a hit. Nicki did it over.
Yeah, you have to.
It's crazy.
You have to. It's his classic.
No, that's not the same song.
No, I mix it that way. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, that's not
I
the
mix
same
it that
song.
way. I'm
You're talking
tripping.
about everybody.
Right. I tripping. When I do my mixing, I mix both of them together. Right.
What
All
else?
3 of those.
There's some more. There's some more. Nah, there's more.
Stacy's mom
Has got it going on. That's my shit. I ain't gonna lie. Stacy's mom was my
Yeah.
shit.
Stacy, can't you see? You're just
Oh,
we
not
got
the one
that.
for me.
No.
Nah,
All right.
he's a straight up rapper.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
Sweet Carolina.
Sweet
Yeah.
Caroline.
Yeah.
Ba, ba, ba.
Yeah, that's an American
Sweet
classic.
Home Alabama.
Yeah. Sweet Home Alabama.
Sounds kind of a little racist. I hear a little racism in it.
I love the
They sprinkle a
Uh,
little hate in there. There's so much more that we're missing.
Yeah.
So much more.
There's so much more that we're missing.
Hey now. You're an
Oh, yeah,
all-star.
that's one.
It's a game on. Go.
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah, that's definitely one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Avril Lavigne had some too.
Skater Boy?
Yeah, I said see you later, boy.
All Star by Smash.
Right. That's what I was just thinking just now. You're an all-star.
Mhm.
Get your game
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Go play.
Damn, they so damn it. They like floating in my head and I can't get them out.
Let me see. I'm gonna put it up. Put the question up there so if I can chime in. The ones that walk in that don't know what we talking about. Continue though. Continue thinking about it.
NSYNC got some too. I can't think of nothing. I'm drawing a blank.
Hit Me Baby One More Time is a banger.
Yeah. That's up there.
Toxic's a banger too.
I like Toxic.
Yeah. Fergie Banana.
Oh, yes.
That's not Fergie. That's Gwen Stefani.
Yes.
The Banana.
Yes, it is. What about Pink? She got songs. I love Pink.
Coming up, so you better
Yeah, get this party started. Yeah. Katy Perry had one too. Katy Perry had one. She had
Fireworks. Is that both?
Fireworks.
Baby,
Was
you're
her.
a fire.
I don't know if that's hood certified though.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think that's hood certified.
No.
I'll put the words in yellow. Continue though. Continue. Don't worry about what I'm doing.
Come on, chat. Help us out.
Right. We need those.
Come on, chat. Koza, where you at?
Hey,
Potato, what's going on?
Potato, drop the ball for Potato.
All right,
He's
if y'all could,
awake.
damn,
Potato, we are
they got some
saying
classic ones too.
what
you know.
white songs get the black card pass?
Yeah, that's hood certified.
Yeah. Should I say hood certified instead of black card pass?
Same shit. It's hood certified. Damn. They had that Green Day had one too. I walk these empty streets. Y'all don't know that song?
No.
Oh, so it's not hood certified then. Nobody knows it.
Look, that's when I go, I took my life to pieces. What's that song, baby?
I love my life to pieces.
Something.
I know what you're talking about. I know. We were so black.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Careless
God.
Whisper. What's that called?
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's all.
Tonight, they're going.
That's a nigga playing the sax, right? There's some
Yes.
saxophone nigga in there
I
somewhere.
wish that we
Yeah,
could
yep, classic,
lose it.
classic.
Yeah, that's okay.
Baby, it's better this way.
What you call it? Madonna got one. Is it like a virgin?
Oh, yeah, like a virgin. It's another one that she got.
She white?
She is. She definitely is.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Get into the groove is.
What about this
Madonna.
one? Is this a hood certified classic? Adele, hello.
Hello.
That's we
Hell
hood certified
yeah.
on
Hell
that?
yeah.
Yes.
We don't even see
Everybody
color.
knows
I think almost everything Adele. Is,
Yeah, Adele is hood certified.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Almost everything.
That's the whole fact.
What about Lady Gaga?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm the biggest fan. I
Paparazzi.
follow you
Paparazzi,
until
yeah.
you love me.
Papa,
Paparazzi.
paparazzi. That's my shit. I ain't gonna lie.
I love that.
Cascada, every time we touch. And every time we touch.
I
oh,
get
yeah,
to
yeah.
Oh my God. Yes, that's a fact. Good certified, definitely.
Potato said Green Day all day. What is Green Day?
I see.
all day?
That's why I just said
That's what
Green
I'm saying.
Day.
He said
It's
that.
probably
He
with the
said
same.
Green
Is that the one? I walk these empty streets.
Right, that's-
Come on, you know what I'm talking about.
Let me see. I'm going real quick. Just to get a synopsis of it.
Boulevard. That's what I was singing. That's what I was singing. Boulevard of Broken Dreams. That's what I was singing.
Okay.
Boulevard of Broken Dreams. That's the one I was talking about. Yeah, I would say that's hood certified. That was back in the emo era.
Okay.
Avril Lavigne. Shit.
Evanescence, Bring Me to Life.
How'd I go?
With Wake Me Up Inside.
Wake me up.
Wake Me Up Inside.
Yeah, that's a-
Call my name
For
and
your
say-
That one.
Yes, that's a good one. Fall Out Boy too.
Fall Out Boy. Yo, yes. Fall Out Boys had some hits.
Yes,
Mr. Brightside by the Killers. Mr. Brightside by the Killers?
see, I'm probably going to hear it.
Cause I'm Mr. Brightside. That song.
I don't know.
You know that fucking song, goddamn it.
I'm probably
Do
going to
we?
hear it.
I know that song, goddamn it. So it's a smash hit. Linkin Park. Well, yeah, Linkin Park. They got a few.
Yeah.
Linkin Park got a
Numb. Numb by
few. Yeah,
Linkin Park.
yeah, no, yeah.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That one. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Da-da, da-da.
Yeah.
Mm.
we don't want to get flagged, y'all, so we don't want to
Yeah.
we don't want to play it and you'll be like, yep, Game Lounge is over for the new year. God damn it.
That would be crazy. Going right into the new year. No more game lounge.
crazy.
All right. While y'all still sit up there and ponder, we're
Right,
getting
right.
through some gaming.
Yeah.
Is it fusion time?
Mm-hmm.
Don't hit him with the fusion.
All right.
This time, I switched it up. I started fusing different shits.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Mr. Little Novi thing over here.
No, that Denzel Washington.
Hey, don't let me get Coz on you again now. You left light skin in that battle. All right?
Right. I really did.
All right,
Coz
so-
just said snatch.
Real
Right.
quick. Real quick.
All right, guys,
so-
we're gonna get to some fusion. You guys know how fusion go. I show you the picture. You tell me what the fuck it's made out of.
Yep,
What two motherfuckers or shits fuse together to make this shit?
pretty much. All right, here we go, y'all.
Let's do this! Ready when you are, Trump!
Why he looks so angry?
Yeah, because as soon as it happens, it's on. It's up.
Pause.
Urkel and Carlton Banks.
Wow. The fusion
Oh,
of
so we
them.
back.
The fusion of them is
Yes,
crazy.
you can tell. How you? That's crazy.
Ma'am.
Thank you, Coach.
Cola said she earned it back with that W from last week.
Oh, yo, no, she went head bound for the house last week.
Yeah.
She whooped Billy ass.
She was batting.
She gave it. Billy said, "Nah, she got it."
I had to represent for the house, damn it. But that's definitely Urkel and Carlton Banks.
Urkel and Carlton
That's
Banks.
funny how you-
That's such a perfect fusion,
It
though.
really
It
is.
It almost kind of looks like the in between of Stefan and Steve.
Yes.
He's transitioned to being
True.
cool.
Yes.
He's like right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, motherfuckers.
Drake and Jason.
Jason Derulo. Jason Derulo.
I would say OVO automatically says Drake in the
Right.
beard,
Oh,
but 50 Cent.
this is hilarious.
50 Cent, Buffalo.
Urkel Banks.
The Santa hat is there for something.
Yeah, I'm hiding something. Sometimes the fusion, it gives it away in the background and shit.
Right.
So I just gotta put the Santa
Oh,
hat.
so it's just there to block something.
Yeah, but it's just in the back.
Okay.
It doesn't mean anything. It's just to block something.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Game? Drake and Game?
Mm.
Oh, Drake and LeBron.
I see where y'all.
Drake and LeBron.
Y'all thinking.
Yeah.
Drake and LeBron.
They
No, but
thinking.
nothing insinuates LeBron though.
Retro, this is hilarious. Look at the kicks though. The kicks is fire though.
Yeah.
The kicks is fire though.
I got the Air Max in the grid.
Yo, the kicks is fire.
Air Max 99.
The fit is a little weird. I wouldn't wear a blazer with
that, no.
with those pants.
No. Drake would.
That is-
Drake definitely would.
Drake would. Oh my God, I know why you laughing at this earlier. Ha ha.
So y'all ready to give up?
Yeah. Let me see.
I'm going to take a shot and say Drake and Game.
Drake and Game.
I said Drake and Jason.
You still with the Jason Derulo?
Oh, Mario, LeBron.
You gotta give me two. You gotta give me two.
LeBron and Drake.
LeBron and Drake.
Okay, she said LeBron and Drake. All right,
Let's
let's
see
go.
what it is.
Hey,
Kanye.
what are you saying? He even got that much facial hair.
Drake.
Yeah.
I knew it was gonna come. I knew it. Go back. Oh, I get it.
You see it though. You see
All
it.
right, all
You
right.
see it, right?
All right.
So booty.
This
Oh,
is.
that's
The,
right, because he said Yeezy right there.
Oh.
I love this game so much. I get to be stupid. Yeah. Oh God.
Makes sense.
Oh, wait.
Oh man, Cloud
And
and
was it even?
no, Cloud and Elroy. Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about the brother.
Edward.
Edward.
Yeah.
I was saying the first guy he just said,
Say what you say.
and the guy from Resident Evil.
No, you right,
Chris.
wife. You right.
Chris, is it
You right.
Chris? What's his name for Resident Evil?
Leon.
Yes,
You right.
Leon.
You're
and the
100% right because
yeah.
of RPD right here.
Yeah, that's Leon and the guy you just
And
said.
Cloud.
Cloud, yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
You don't get that point.
No,
She does.
She gets the point.
She,
She gets the point.
How come you didn't see that
you
Leon?
were strong on the.
I said
that's
because I saw the
Leon,
arm right here. Look, the
Now, what you
arm
see, that's
made
Leon
me feel
underneath
that
it.
way.
You see the cop suit?
Yeah. After, when I saw the jacket and I seen this thing on the
Yeah.
jacket, I was all right. Yeah,
So who you say it is?
Leon and Cloud.
that's Leon and Cloud.
Okay, Leon and Cloud. Okay.
But
Let's
I
see- let's see
said
what chat
before
say.
Cloud and Ed,
Kanye Graham. Shut Codes are stupid.
Kanye Green is funny. Okay. Oh.
AK Kaden.
What up, Kate?
KK, this is in the building.
Welcome
Drop
in.
a bomb. She said Jason Derulo.
They said Derulo. Should have like that. She said it.
You right. She did write it that way.
Yeah, she did. She did, right? Yeah.
She did write it that way. I'm tripping.
God damn it.
Don't worry, chat. I got some good ones for y'all.
Press play. Press play.
I got some good. All y'all about to chime in.
I want to see what it is. I knew it.
Yep.
Tell you.
Leon and Cloud.
You hit
Yeah,
She
do
hit
that one.
She hit that one.
I played them too much, I guess, right? And me not
Wonder
getting it.
Woman. Wonder Woman.
And Link.
And Link from Zelda.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Wonder Woman and Link.
Yep.
That's definitely a Zelda shield.
Yep.
100%.
See,
No one else got that damn
Yeah.
We'll
shield.
start leaving you home.
Ah, see? We on to his ass this week.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
how she
definitely-
fucked up.
Look, the shield is leaned up against ruins. Like, this bullshit here.
We got that one.
The first time we did it, it was the regular Zelda shield color. I'm the one that went back in and said, no, swap the colors.
Yeah,
it's
It's
right.
too obvious.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
give it away.
Josie said that's a wild matchup. It is. It is. That's
I know.
if Zelda was Wonder
Ah.
Woman though, low key.
I don't know what he
That'd
That's-
be her shit.
I actually like that though. It came
Yeah.
out fire. It came out really nice.
Super dope.
Super dope.
As a
Yep.
picture,
Super
Super
dope.
dope.
Super
Yeah,
dope.
that's fine.
All right, I got some more for y'all.
That was easy. Come on.
Yep. come on, come on.
Wait,
come
where the
on.
tough shit at?
Shit, where the
Hey, shut up.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah,
Sam.
motherfuckers.
Oh,
Sam-
is it Sam?
Yeah.
Samus and Aquaman?
Let me see what chat's saying. Let me see what chat's saying. Come on, Koza. Come on, Retro. Where y'all
Cadence,
at?
Thank you, Queen. That
Cadence.
Was, that's how I meant it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Jason.
Yeah. I'm tripping. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody get the phone out.
Come on now.
Let me get some of my nerves. Magneto and something.
Magneto. Retro said Magneto and someone. Okay,
Magneto and
and-
Samus.
that's what you say.
Magneto and
Yeah,
Samus.
Magneto and Samus.
Samus. Okay.
Or,
Mm.
or Iron Man.
Magneto and Samus.
Where you at, Koz? Come on, Koza.
That's what I'm going with. Magneto and Samus.
Yeah.
Mm.
Helmets.
Motherfuckers.
That's
Yeah.
tough though.
That was a
That's
good
tough.
mashup.
Yeah, it is.
That one came out nice.
It did.
That's Iron Man. And Darth Vader?
And Mandalorian.
I don't know.
Iron Man and Mandalorian.
See what the chat talking about.
Boba Fett. Boba Fett, Mandalorian.
That was sick. Now that
Mm.
Samus and
Yeah.
yeah.
that shit came out. Mwah,
Yeah, it did.
mwah.
With the wings on the end.
When I first seen it, I was like, that's fire.
Yeah. It gave a little Namor with the wings on the end.
With the I get
Gave a little
Yeah.
bit of Namor.
Iron Man and Boba Fett. That came out
Yeah.
good too, though. I
Yeah,
ain't gonna
Iron Man,
lie to
Boba
you.
Fett, Mandalorian.
Once you see this little thing here,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like-
It's so beat up.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of them come out so good, even though it's obvious, I just gotta use it.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
looks
yeah.
so good. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It just works.
Yeah, it's fire though. If Iron Man was in the Star Wars world, destroying
Mm.
everything.
Wait, that's
Oh my god.
I love this one.
That's so fire.
That's so fire. Oh no, what you think it
I
is?
don't know.
Oh no, let's get the chat. Don't say you. What you,
yeah, I know what it is. I'm gonna let
you know both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see what chat says.
it's clear what it is. We just said it, other guy, and then now look at the what it's sitting in and with the eye in the middle. Come on.
See what that said.
Okay, wait.
What?
Master Sword and Sword of Power.
Okay, Retro's in there.
Yeah.
Master Sword and Thundercats.
Lionel is in there.
Kitty said Master Sword and Thundercats. She said, fuck the name of the real sword.
Yeah.
That nigga sword.
Yeah, Lionel.
Okay. What are you saying?
I said Thundercats and Zelda,
Oh,
but
this one.
Lionel and Link. The Lionel Link sword.
I'm past this one.
That's the go ahead.
Yep, Thundercats.
That's
Thundercats.
the Zelda sword.
The Master Sword with the
And that's the sword of
Power.
Omen.
Sword of
Put that
Omen.
together, maybe.
The power sword, I think that's He-Man.
Okay. Yep, I know Thundercats. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh, fuck, you know, that's Joker. and
Yep.
Pennywise.
Yep, that's kind of
That's
cool.
tough.
With the ha
On the sword?
on
Yeah,
the
that's
on the
tough.
knife.
Yeah, whatever. The
That's
stabby
tough.
shit.
As long as it is, you might as well call it the sword,
Might
right?
as well, yeah. Let's see what chat talking about.
That's fire.
That came out
Joker
nice.
and it, yep. For sure. With the couple balloons.
Yeah, he got a few of them.
a couple balloons
But
with the
they're red.
ha knife, and then
That's so
it's
tough.
That one came out good.
clown.
Yeah.
It
Joker
was
Jedi.
obvious who it was. It just came out good.
Yeah.
I didn't put the last. Yeah, whatever.
We
It's,
know it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, for sure,
That
for
was
sure.
good. That was good.
That was super dope, y'all. That was super dope. Okay, I got to get us. That
got a
was
raid?
a raid that's coming in by. Gotta see who the raid's coming in by.
What?
Gluttony with the raid.
my man Glut with the raid.
Drop a bomb for Glut with the raid.
Glut. Appreciate you, my guy.
Welcome in, Raiders.
Welcome in, Raiders. Welcome to the Game Lounge. For those of you who are new to the Game Lounge, we do this every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am your ghost.
Aha. The ghost. Space ghost.
Space Ghost.
From coast to coast.
Coast to coast. I am your host, Golden Crush 200, aka Mr. 200. Co-host.
CJ the DJ, everyone's favorite DJ, and
And
the
our
queen
queen.
of the show.
What's going on?
Welcoming everybody.
And
Shout out to you, Glut.
we all would like to
appreciate
say-
you.
What's good? How you,
Big Brooklyn's in the building. Drop a bomb for Big Brooklyn. Drop a bomb, drop a bomb. TY is in the building. Drop a bomb for TY too. Yeah.
Here, welcome in everybody. I'm glad to see all you guys here because this is our last Game Lounge episode for the year.
Right.
Next time you see us, it'll be next year. So
Right.
let's hang out and have a good time and let the 2025
For some reason-
go out with a bang with us here on the Game Lounge. Hope you guys had a good time over there with Gluttony. I know y'all did.
Yeah, of course, of course. Of course.
How was stream, Glut? What's going on over your side? What we got coming up next?
I had something, but for some reason,
It's not on the thing.
it's not popping up to the thing.
Send it again.
Yeah, I'm trying, but it's giving me a little technical issue. Did you, the Wi-Fi to the connections? You didn't do anything to it, right?
No.
Still the same.
Wow, he does that. We just had some fun with these.
Right. It's coming, y'all.
Don't worry about it,
I
chat.
had to resend it. Just
Don't
now,
worry
so
about
it'll
it,
take a little
chat.
bit.
Because I'm the tech guy.
Right.
I have to
Yeah.
do my thing. CJ's always fucking shit up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Every Sunday.
So yeah, man.
I'm hitting the wrong buttons.
We're gonna let the queen pick one.
I'm doing all type of shit. I'm over here putting it to the Be Right Back scene. And then coming back into the regular scene. Look at this. See? I'm
You know what I'm saying?
doing
Fucking shit up. Fucking shit up. Big Brooklyn, what's going on with you?
I'm just doing
The
everything.
good one? What is it?
Say something really exciting in the least excited voice possible.
You're having a baby.
Hey, guess what? I just wanted to lie.
Oh God! I just want to say that.
Whatever.
I was just say that.
Whatever.
I was just about to say that. I was just going to say that.
I got a raise.
Yeah.
Just for the Tesla. The new one.
The new one.
With the doors up? Yeah.
Let me pick one. Let me pick one. Let me pick one. Let's see what I got. Spell your name in reverse. First successful spelling wins.
She does this in the house. We do
No, I
this.
don't. Don't be doing that.
We've
Well,
done
I know
this
mine's too.
What's yours? Let me hear it.
R-A-M-A-D.
Your name could really be.
That could actually be a name.
That's crazy.
Ramad.
It really could. What
You
about
got
yours?
you got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, EDYLC.
Yours sound like an infection.
Yeah.
He
He sound like. That's not a name.
Oh
Bro.
my God.
You say I'm be like, you okay, bro?
Oh my
Azak.
Azak.
God.
Yo, that's hilarious. Hold on. You wanna grab one?
Hollywood Gold is in the building. Let me
Yo, Holly, what's good?
drop a bomb for Hollywood Gold.
Oh, man.
Edit, eat it.
Eat it.
Eat it.
Okay. Make up a convincing lie about yourself.
A convincing lie about myself. I once had sex with 3 women at the same time.
I believe
That
it.
could
You
be true.
was in college.
Motherfucker lie, right.
You did go to college. I believe it.
That convincing?
Yes. That was very convincing. For you, very.
Might have been true.
Right. Exactly, nigga. What the hell?
Nigga told the real
They said, I
story.
believe that 100% right. Like what? What? We said a lie, nigga. A lie.
That's crazy.
He
You
lied
said
about-
convincing.
He said he lied about the lie. Like what?
Nigga told a triple lie.
Right. Wants to be
Hey, with the George Russell, I cannot tell a lie.
Kitty said you can't freak that part.
Who, me?
I don't know if she's allowed to say that.
What?
Ignore them, Kitty. Ignore them both.
I don't know. Pot, kettle black. I don't know.
Dougie said, "Oh man, not moving like that."
Pot kettle, 6'7".
Yeah, you right.
Nah, she is. You can see she is. One time I ruined the quarter key by using baking powder instead of baking soda.
That's true, nigga.
Ooh, that was-
No, that's true. He fucked up. He was gonna sell some shit and fucked him up. You was trying to cut it. Fuck out of here, Chloe. That was true.
I sold somebody oregano instead of weed.
That's crazy work. We fighting.
That's the
You
biggest
got me
fight
smoking
ever.
seasoning is crazy.
But you're supposed to know the smoking that ain't no weed.
That the first of all, as soon as I look at you, I'm snuffing you.
Right, because why
The
you
fuck
trying
is
to play
this,
in
bro?
my face? Fuck you right on up. You don't play with niggas weed now.
Nah.
So you oregano. You went in the house and smoked it. That was the
Nigga
healthiest
said, I
smoke
got a
you ever
different
did.
kind of high. It's crazy. I feel like some
Look at-
chicken.
look at- right. Some chicken is crazy.
Alright, man, we gonna pick it.
Oh, shit.
Which one, the pick one? Yep. Put that back in the
Oh,
shuffle.
this one.
It's in? Okay.
The smallest hand wins.
I don't want to
That's
play.
why I still is going to be funny.
Yeah. That don't make no sense to me to play.
Yeah, you got the smallest hands in the room. I cannot. The smallest hand wins. Yours is smaller than mine.
Fuck out of here. Don't
Yours
try to play me on
His is
TV.
smaller than
Don't try to play me on TV. Get the ruler or some shit. GK about to win this.
Oh my god.
But Al, come on, let's do it.
No. Nope.
Get the small ass
Nope.
hand.
Mine is over a little bit. A little bit. Yours is his is bigger than his.
No.
I don't
You
know.
didn't measure properly.
Yes,
You
I
didn't-
Yes, I did.
She did
You
this.
trying to lie?
She did this. Yours big. I'm over
man.
here.
Oh,
One more
man.
time.
Look. Look at yours. Let me see yours.
I don't want to play this game.
Oh, yeah, look at his huge
I can
ass
compete. I
Shaq
can
hands.
compete.
Kevin Hart
All right,
Shaq.
let's I win.
He really did. His
I
thumb
got
is
more
bigger than
hands.
his. That's crazy. Forget that question. Next
Yeah.
question. His hand is bigger than mine.
Well, that would make sense.
No,
I'm a
thought
whole-
it
I would hope
was.
so.
I'm a whole dude.
I would hope so.
I'm mad it was that close, yo. You had to measure it 3 times. Wait, hey, yo.
Don Debbie in the building,
Pause
jumping ball
on
with
the
Don
measure.
Debbie.
Pause on the measure 3
Yeah.
times. Crazy.
Lord. What's up, Don Nabby?
Don, what's going on, bruh? All right, come on.
Put some more. You gotta pick one.
You got to pick one. You got
Oh, yeah. Let me get one more. Hey, but they didn't want me to get that one.
Just see what it is.
It's not that. It's just tell me the interesting fun fact. I don't want this boring
No,
one
that's
again.
boring,
That's boring.
That's why he was saying, no, not that one. Not
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
tell
Yeah.
you, nigga.
Alright, that was cool. Name a food that starts with the letter Q. First one wins.
Quiche.
Oh,
Is it Q or K?
I don't know. I never had that.
How do you spell quiche?
I don't
Name
know.
a food that starts with the letter Q.
A food that starts with Q. Quiznos.
Quail eggs.
No.
Quail eggs is good. Yeah, he said quail eggs.
No.
Quail eggs is good.
Eggs don't start with Q.
Oh,
Quail
quail
does.
eggs.
The food is egg.
It's a
Oh.
quail egg.
Doesn't matter. It's egg.
I can-
You're
I can
eating
do it.
egg.
Quail.
Ew.
No.
Quail.
No.
Quail.
Fuck out of here.
If you don't eat the egg, you'll eat the quail.
Damn, he might be right. That don't count.
I can't think of a word with a Q.
Food that starts.
Quinoa, as Koza
Yeah,
said.
damn it.
Quesadilla, as
Oh,
Gluttony
that's what
said.
it was. I was gonna get
Damn,
quesadilla.
kiwi's fucking K.
Kiwi is K.
Is
Quiche
quiche K?
is Q.
Yeah!
Oh, so quiche.
I
What
got
is
it
that,
first.
fish?
Nah, it's like
Quiche
this.
is cheese. It's
Yeah,
cheese
some
inside
kind of
of
shit.
like a pastry thing.
Yeah, some shit like that.
Remember, on White Chicks, Marlon ate all that quiche and had to go to the bathroom. And he ran to the bathroom and said, "Move, bitch."
Food that's what else they got
You
though?
can't eat quail. Like, what they
Yeah. Can't eat quail.
You can. I don't think it's good.
say. You
You
can't eat that.
can eat whatever you want. If people eating humans, you ain't supposed to eat them.
Oh, yes.
What else they got that starts with Q?
There's no really food that quesadilla was good.
Quesadilla starts with Q?
It's a bird. Why not? Type of bird,
Right.
though.
Like Big Brooklyn said, it's a bird.
No,
We're
people
gonna
eat
eat
quail.
the pigeons in the hood. That's like going outside.
You go to some countries, pigeons is a delicacy.
Yeah. They'll fucking project pitch it
What
up.
do you think escargot is? Snails.
Snails.
It's just a fancy search sound
Yep.
for snail.
Like the other shit, the fish.
And caviar.
Caviar, that's nice. It's cold
Fish
fish
eggs.
eggs. I
You
don't
tasted it?
No, I haven't,
I
but
want
this
to
is
try it.
it's crunchy. It's cold fish eggs.
Some tribes bust down the pigeon.
Hey, yo, man, meat is
I'm
meat.
not doing that.
Just Q is slang for barbecue.
That's true.
No,
Koza said.
When you
no,
say
absolutely not. And it shit starts with B, Barbie.
you.
Barbie.
The fuck? All right, we got another one. This is corny.
See?
He wins.
What is it?
Trendiest outfit on now wins.
Oh,
I tell you, he wins. He can go to eat right now and that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? He can step out right casually.
Yeah.
I got on a. Where am I going?
You got the Homer feet.
Where am I going? People,
Ah.
it's not going nowhere. What you got on?
I got a regular shirt. with
Casual.
sweatpants.
I say he trendy as out.
Quill is actually pretty good. Just a miniature chicken. Really?
Who said that?
Maldoni said quail is actually good. It's a miniature chicken.
Wow.
Well,
Maybe
there you
that's why
go.
We gotta try different stuff.
I don't want no quail.
I like quail
I'm
eggs.
vegan, so
Oh.
I feel
I'm out of the question.
like a quail is a pet. I want to eat pets.
It's just a small bird, though. It's a little bigger than a pigeon, not
Yep,
as big
with
as
the
a.
little thing they go-
Goats is somebody's
Yeah.
pet, right? And fish is pets. And goat is a pet. So you eat pets.
I have not seen the goat pet.
You see a fish pet? Let it run.
I don't eat goldfish. I ain't see a porgy pet.
No, fish
Or
is fish.
I don't even eat porgies anyway.
Oh,
but-
yes.
I don't like
pick
goddamn
one
porgies.
more good one before we continue.
Right. I don't like porgies. No, we're not making porgies tomorrow. No, we're not. We doing.
Share your
You getting
worst.
porgies tomorrow.
Oh,
I ain't getting no
wait,
porgies
wait.
tomorrow.
This is a good one. Share your worst date story. Worst one wins. Date story.
I got one. We done went out to Atlantic City for her birthday and our anniversary. We done went to a bunch of casinos. We ended up going to Sugar Factory over there at the Hard Rock Casino. We in there, went to Sugar Factory, got little fancy drinks with the smoke shit coming out of it. Fist bumping with the white people over there while they doing coke on the table. We came out, went down the block to Wet Willie's and did a two-step with a couple of old people. 2 o'clock in the morning, walking back to my truck was total. Somebody ran into my shit, tore my whole shit up. Couldn't even drive the shit.
Yo, when I say that night went from up to down.
It was a lit night, bro. That
totaled
night
it.
was at a 20 and went to a
Totaled it.
negative 10
Totaled
real
it.
quick.
Fuck the whole trip up.
Oh
And
wow.
we was in
Mind you,
there
I'm in
for
Atlantic
hours.
City with a truck that's totaled. I can't get back to Brooklyn.
We
How
can't
did you
even-
get back?
I had to
You had to get
go
back
to Enterprise, get a
Take
car, and the only
everything
car
out the
they
truck.
had, remember, I had a big ass truck, a big white Lincoln Navigator. Bro, I had to rent a car. They had no big trucks. I had no choice but to get a Nissan Kicks, like this small. Put all the shit. Mind you, we went shopping. We had won games and shit, like little teddy bears and whatnot from the amusement park. Bunch of shit. We had to smash all of that shit in the Nissan Kicks and drive back.
Totaled it. That's us partying the same night.
Bro, this is crazy.
Oh, that's crazy.
Not the sign off.
So,
Wow.
yeah, no. Let me show chat. I need to show chat my shit.
Nah, that's
Video,
crazy.
show the pictures.
Yeah, I'm-
Scroll down.
Chat, what about
Scroll to the
y'all?
other side to see the pictures.
No, I'm gonna show them the video. Hold on, chat. I'm show you how the video
That shit was crazy, bro.
real quick. Cause that
You should have put it up there.
Too much light.
I'm gonna put the video to our thing. Hold on. Let me send it.
Yeah, chat. Yeah, I chime in. I went on a date with this girl one time. From the moment we met up, it went downhill.
Jesus
From
Christ.
the moment, mind you,
You even
girl.
do nothing yet?
old girl had the body, Oh,
You
a
ain't even
rock
do
star.
nothing yet,
I ain't
dog?
even do
It's
nothing
crazy.
yet, bro. That's probably the most miserable time I had going and coming back ever.
Jesus Christ, man.
I couldn't wait to drop off and run back home, son. What was the question? Tell your worst date story. The worst date you ever had. Hold on, wait. Oh, they got a lot bubbling up there.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Start with what Koza.
Koza said, I met this fine little thing on Tinder. Took her to dinner back to my place, and she stole my DVDs and carried them out in a laundry basket. So I couldn't watch my movies or do laundry for 3 days.
You're not serious.
He dead ass serious.
You're not serious, Koza.
But how
She came
still
to your
go-
crib and stole your DVDs.
Oh my god.
My DVD. Wait, how did she? Wait a minute. I got a question. How did she get in and out of your crib without you noticing, bro?
Oh my god.
What happened in that story?
That shit is so funny.
KK just dropped a good one.
Yes, she said, my mom decided to collude with my ex. He was an ex at the he was an ex at the time.
Wait, whoa,
Just a
whoa,
little-
pause, stop already. What?
He wasn't an ex at the time. So her mom decided to collude, which means work with
What it?
her ex, which wasn't her ex at the time, to surprise me for my birthday at a mall. She told me to go meet her at the mall, so I go after I get off. Homie met me at the entrance with no gift. He said he was the gift. He said he was the gift. We got food and I paid for it. The way I dipped and my mom and I had to have a serious conversation about boundaries, it's crazy work.
Wait, so wait a minute now.
So this is exactly what happened.
Okay,
It was her birthday.
okay.
She went, no, the mom and the boyfriend,
They
At the
got the
time.
plan together.
they was like, oh, okay, look, this is what we're going to do for her birthday. We're going
Right,
to meet
right.
her at the mall. They met at the mall. He met her at the front of the door.
No
of the
gift.
Mall. No gift. He said he is a gift. Met back up with the moms in the mall, and they went down to go find some food or whatever, and she paid for all the food
On her birthday.
on her birthday.
Run,
So-
girl, run.
So the boyfriend ate, mom's ate, she on her dime for her birthday.
That's crazy.
Crazy work. Crazy work.
Stone face, serious son. Yo, that's crazy work.
Stone face serious.
Even as a nigga, I say, sis, get rid of him.
Yeah.
That's crazy. If I'm that broke, I'm not coming out.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a
I'm just
fact.
like,
I don't know how people do
I'm gonna
that.
keep it 100 to your face. Like, look, I ain't got it. If I did, I would do. I ain't got it.
Right.
I'm not gonna come and make a
That's
fool of
it.
myself. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. That's all.
That's
It's
crazy.
work.
That's ballsy as fuck.
That's mad bullshit.
Baldoni.
Baldoni got one. He said, I used to have a pet tarantula. Brought this girl home. She had an arachnophobia. When she woke up and turned on the lights, she had a panic attack. Had to take her to the hospital trembling and crying.
Yeah, but that ain't no joke. People got that.
Ooh.
That's new mice.
I'm not gonna lie, Baldoni. I ended up in the ambulance to the hospital on the date too.
Oh, yeah. I remember you told us that one. You told Jack that one, too. Ooh, boy.
He said, no, he wasn't an ex at the time. So
Oh,
he was my
Kanan
ex-boyfriend.
said, no,
decided
he
to
was
fuck
an ex
with
at the
me.
time. So he was my ex-boyfriend who decided to surprise me at the mall with no damn gift. So he wasn't even dating at the time. That
So
was an
wait,
ex
hold on now. If
already.
he an ex, you don't gotta bring a gift.
Oh,
But-
my God.
What's the point of you showing
you
up
mean?
on her
Exactly.
birthday if you're not
Don't
gonna bring a
come
gift?
here.
What's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point?
You my ex talking about I am the gift. Nigga, get the fuck out my face.
What's the
Nigga,
point?
get the fuck out my face. Even if you're trying to rekindle shit, at least
Come
show up with something.
A card.
Something, nigga.
I got the video loaded, y'all. Once the video finishes
God
loading, I'm
damn.
going to show
Everybody
y'all.
got ads. Everybody got ads.
Everybody's in
Oh,
ads.
Everybody's in
BT
ad
gamers
jail.
ads.
Damn.
Yup. That's
Let
crazy.
us know when y'all all back from ads. Well, when they are back from ads. I don't know when the ads start. And Baldoni said back from ads. Okay, cool.
I got a.
They was in ad jail. I got my video loaded up. Once that video loads to the drive, I'm gonna show
Let
y'all
me-
real quick.
I gotta run outside real quick.
Yeah,
So hit me to be right back. 'Cause I gotta.
do your thing. I gotta talk about this anyway.
Yeah. I'm just. I gotta.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. While
Chat,
y'all
give me
on
1 second.
while y'all on ads, do y'all thing. Okay, back in real quick. I got the video. I got the video real quick. I'm gonna show y'all what I was talking about. Cause bro, when I tell y'all I was aggravated, GK had to step away real quick, go take care of something real quick. But in the midst of that, I'm gonna show y'all the bullshit. When I tell y'all I was so heated, we had such a great night, y'all. A great night. It was her birthday. It was our anniversary. We was in Atlantic City. We don't actually want some money that time. It was cool. We was eating. We was doing great. Went to Sugar Factory. I done got the rocks, the rock drink, the Dwayne the Rock Johnson drink. You had, I forget what drink you had. That's Dancing with the People, right? Crazy work. I mean, let me pull a video up for y'all real quick. Hold on. Real quick. Hold on. I tell y'all, I was so tight. So tight. I got the video. Hold on. Boom. Look at my truck, chat. Look at my truck. The pieces, it's all on the floor. Look at my shit. Scrape my shit on the side. Push my whole wheel in. Look at the door right here. Look at the step up part. Oh my God, yo! I was so I'm getting PTSD right now looking at it. I'm about to cry. I'm gonna cry in the car. I'm gonna cry in the car. I'm gonna cry in the car. Cause look at this shit. Look, all of it tore this whole shit up. This whole shit. Look at this. Somebody come and look at this. I'm just gonna inch my way back just a little bit. Look at this. Such a good time. Such a good time. Such a good time. And turns into this. My God, I was so tight. I was so tight. I didn't know what to do, chat. I swear. Yo, we got to visit. Well, according to, because Koza said, we got to visit. According to, because this is what, remember what the cops were saying on the paper. When we got to the car, there was a little white piece of paper with like the Atlantic City Police Department thing on it. Bro, we had to go to the precinct the next morning. I get to the precinct the next morning. Ain't no cop. No cop in the precinct. I literally was walking into like some Resident Evil shit. Just walking in, no cop nowhere. I had my hands the whole time like, hello?
That shit was crazy.
Looking for an officer. Hello? No cop inside the precinct, but the doors were open. I came out. I didn't go too far. I went to the door. I tapped the door. The door was open. I went inside and I seen pretty much. I swear, went back out the door and I seen one cop in a car, like maybe a couple cars back, away from the precinct door. I go tap on the glass. I tell him the story that I just showed y'all about the car. He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, that officer's not on duty right now. You would have to wait till he's on duty." I said, "Yo, bro, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm not from Atlantic City. I gotta go back home. Today's the day we go back home right now, bro. I ain't got time to wait for him to get on duty, figure it out, and I still gotta figure out a way home afterwards." So he just took my ID, he took my information, and he said the cop will call me. Bro, that cop ain't called me till like 3-4 days later. I'm already back home now. Already back home. Lo and behold, as they were saying on the police report, after I got it, hold on 1 second, GK coming back, because I want him to hear this part. I want him to hear this part. Come on back in here, bro. Come on back in here. So I showed them the video.
Uh-huh.
You want to take a quick peek at the video?
Yeah.
All right, I'll show you. I'll show you the video too. Cause I was already running down some of the. Bruh, I tell you, I was aggravated. Let me just show GK the video.
Damn, they got parts on the floor.
Look at that shit, bro. Look at this shit.
We got in there, it happened. We came back hours later.
Look at this shit. So my shit, my wheel is in. My doors, look at my doors, bro.
Damn, he fucked it up.
Tore my shit. She
did a U-turn.
She, mind you, this car, the truck is on a dead end. It's on a dead end block.
That's crazy
You can't
work.
be speeding on a dead end block. So I'm like, what did you do, girl?
She did a U-turn, but she said, you know, you U-turn, you gotta back up.
She tore my whole shit up.
Man,
Bro.
she ripped.
Tore my whole shit
Man,
up.
y'all going out having a good time and came back to this.
Yeah.
Came back to that, bro. And I tell you, I was over it. I wanted to kill somebody, bro.
It says worst story win. I think y'all win.
That was crazy. To this day, we go back to Jersey Atlantic City for a minute.
Yeah, after that, I was not going back to Atlantic City for a hot minute, bro. It took me 6 months, but on the police report, as I was saying, y'all, on the police report, it was saying that the girl died.
Yeah.
Remember they were saying that the girl died? I'm like, she ain't dead. She on Facebook right now posting. I'm about to run into her crib right now and just snatch out her crib.
How stupid it says she thought she was in Sonic Racing.
Yo, how you Tokyo drifted on a dead end? Like,
That's
what you
crazy
doing?
work. She was drunk. She was drunk.
She tore my whole shit up, and she just, like, at the end of it, she hit a Suburban in front of me and just cracked his tail light. You couldn't
Damn.
crack my tail light and just fuck somebody else shit up?
God damn.
Her shit was accordion like, as the shit was saying. It was like pushed all the way
She
in.
was jacked up too.
Finished. Finished.
Damn.
As the police report said that she had to be hospitalized.
Wow.
I said, bullshit. She ain't dead. She on Facebook right now. She on Instagram. I Googled everything, bro. I Googled her full name. I done went to one of those people search websites, searched that shit up. I paid the extra little $7 that they was asking for because I wanted to know who the fuck did this shit.
That's crazy.
Bro, I wanted to kill her, bro. I wanted to kill her. Real Bags, drop a bomb for Real Bags. So Lurky, happy Sunday, fun day. I hope you have a magnificent night.
Same to you, bro.
Of course, of course.
That's crazy. So yeah,
Intermission, let me go get some popcorn. Yeah, get your popcorn.
He said never mind.
get your popcorn, Don. Get the popcorn. Get the popcorn. But I could do you can do the next game.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
solid
crazy.
thing now, bro. And when I tell I was so tight. So tight. So tight. All right, y'all. So we doing another round of Figure It the Fuck Out. As y'all know, you both just look at the picture or look at the wordings or read the message and basically figure it the fuck out. Simple as that.
Simple as that.
The Game Lounge. The Game Lounge. The Game Lounge.
That's that guy right there. That's that guy right there. That was 8 pounds ago.
8 pounds is hilarious.
That's crazy.
Check you out. Check.
That's a go quick.
I had to get a new truck. That's the new one. Folks, then I had to sell it eventually.
All of our official
So-
affiliation, and also including Club 6.
Yes. I want to bring some notoriety to that. Of course, we all know Game Lounge is affiliated with Art Club, Bridge Crew, Maid Mafia, and yours truly. But now we have a new affiliation with our people from Club 6. So
Yep.
drop a bomb for our people from Club 6.
Shout out to my man COS Billy.
Yes, indeed. Hit CEO as Billy C.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those that was on the chat. Everybody that was in there.
All of the Club 6 people.
Yes.
Chicken
Head. I got Chicken Head too. Yeah, for sure. And all of you guys, shout out to all of y'all
All
for
you
always
guys, man.
coming and hanging with us every Sunday.
We appreciate y'all.
We appreciate y'all. Thank
the
you
list keeps
all for
growing.
rocking with us. There's
The
so
list
many,
keeps
y'all.
growing.
There's so many to add up there, obviously. Let's play another round of Figure It the Fuck Out Holiday Edition. Let's keep it going. Okay. So, figure it the fuck out. So clearly, it's faith. The word says faith, and the letter is missing. Cool. But there's a message between what you're reading.
Gotta have faith.
Gotta have faith? Okay.
So there's a letter missing, but we know it's faith.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't know.
What letter's missing?
I.
Okay. That's your hit. Right there. As I said, what letter's missing? You said I. Let's see what chat talking about. Coda says,
Blind
blind faith,
faith.
no eye.
Something I'm missing.
Yeah, me too.
Something I'm missing. Hold on now. Cross the legs.
You want to take a crack at it?
Gotta have faith.
EK Jeff is questioning what's going on too. BT Games, I can stay for a couple hours. My plans got changed until next Sunday. Okay, Tucker
Okay,
Ball
awesome.
BT Gamer. Hang out with us, brother. Hang out with us.
Oh shit.
I faith without sight. Okay, Hollywood Gold said, I faith without sight.
Gotta have faith.
All right, so let's go through. Let's go
Let's
through.
go through.
Let's see which one it is. Is it what Cole say or is it what Hollywood Gaming say? Blind faith.
Blind faith.
Reason why it's blind faith because it has no eye.
Oh,
That's crazy.
It's faith with no eye.
Crazy.
Just as Cole said. Tomatoes?
politically incorrect.
That's what I was going to.
Politically incorrect?
Yeah, because it's not spelled right, is it?
Right, no, it's not.
Okay.
It's spelled. Yeah, it's politically incorrect.
How would you
It's
spell it?
politically, but it's incorrect.
Ah.
It's an L missing.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yep.
Yep.
Two L's.
Come on with the wife. Come on with the wife. I see you. Yeah. Yeah. Answer is, obviously, as you said, politically incorrect.
That was a good one. Blessing.
It's blessing. But, what do you see blessing?
What do you mean? What do I see? Blessing.
See the eye.
Okay. So you see the word blessing.
Right.
So what is, how are you seeing it? What is it showing you
Blessing
properly?
in disguise. Come on now.
There you go, man. Let's see a chat guy. Let's see a chat. Cole
Count your
said,
blessings. Count your blessings. A good one.
count your
Count your
blessings. It's
blessings.
actually
Is a
solid.
good one. That's solid right there.
Because there's a 1551 in it.
No, yeah.
I think if it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's
Count
a
your
solid.
blessings.
That's a solid point though.
Right. But Cole said blessing in disguise. Count your blessings is good.
It is good.
I think I'm still gonna give Kitty that point right there.
I think it's right. It's right.
A blessing in disguise.
It's still good.
Yep.
Okay.
What image below can be inserted in this image to finish this famous 6-word quote?
To be or not to be?
C.
To be.
C. To be. To be. To be. That's a or, not to be.
Yup,
C. Come on now.
God, that
Come
was
on
crazy.
Come on
To
now.
be or not to
Cole
be.
says C. BT Gamer says C.
Yeah.
He said, "Did you see my question? Is my game today or next week?
Next week.
Next week.
I didn't know you didn't tell me that you had more time. We spoke.
Yeah,
on,
we spoke about this last week that you wouldn't potentially
Right.
be here, so we didn't want to do your game without you being here. That is the question, Hollywood. That is the
That
question.
is the question.
Yep. To be or
To
not
be or not to be.
That was a good one. I like that.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
That's
be
one of my
or
favorite ones.
not.
It's one of my. The or.
Yeah.
The or is crazy.
What the hell?
Bugs Bunny in
Sister.
Video Rabbit, a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Yep.
Roger Rabbit. Roger Rabbit. Roger.
Who framed Roger Rabbit?
Roger Rabbit.
It's Roger Rabbit.
Okay, let's see what Jack got to say. Kitty says Roger Rabbit. BT Games I just found out a little while ago. Okay.
That's cool. That's
It's
cool.
cool.
That's
It's
cool.
Hollywood says Roger Rabbit as well.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Solid. That's a solid 1 point right there. Though. I think if it's Roger Rabbit,
Let's
Who
see.
Framed Roger Rabbit is like an extra point.
Roger Rabbit. And of course, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the name of the movie. So
Okay.
Roger Rabbit.
Okay,
I haven't seen that in
that's a classic.
Classic.
years.
What's going on here, CJ?
Heart. I don't know what's in
Those are the elements.
That's
Those are
fire,
elements of like,
wind, fire, water, rock.
wait, hold on now. What's the heart? Kingdom Hearts. Fuck
Kingdom
you.
Hearts?
Kingdom Hearts. Those are all the kingdoms.
Okay.
And then the heart.
Okay.
If that's Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom
that's
Hearts, my
crazy.
nigga. I'm
Kingdom
still on there right there,
That'd
dog.
be
I'm
crazy.
still on
You stand
that
on that
one
one?
right there, dog. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
dog?
I hear you. I hear
You
you.
know what I mean, dog? You feel
I
me?
hear you.
Rolling.
You wanna lock that one in?
I'm gonna lock the clank. Yeah.
You
Hold the
like that
key. Hold
too?
the key,
Yeah, I got
sis.
the key.
You got the key?
I got
Wait, she put it in her pocket.
Yup, right
She
here.
put it in her pocket.
She got it in her pocket.
She got it.
Hold it down. Hold it down. Hold it down.
I think that's what it
Hold
is.
it down. Hold it down.
Kingdom Hearts is smart.
You feel me?
It better not be nothing else.
It better not be nothing else.
So let's see what chat say.
I thought
Kitty
Avatar
says
as well.
Captain
I thought,
Planet. Baldoni says Captain Planet. BT Gamer says Avatar. Hollywood says I like Baldoni's answer, Captain Planet.
Captain Planet solid too.
Okay, so Kingdom Hearts
I'm going
or
with
Captain Planet.
I'm,
BT Gamer says Avatar, so we got to put those three in perspective.
if there's an or, it's Kingdom Hearts, Captain Planet.
Okay.
Come on now.
Okay.
Gotta be Kingdom
By the way, those are the Avatar and Last Airbender, but it is Captain Planet.
Come
What's the
on.
heart for
Heart.
So-
My
right.
teeth.
then?
Right, so these
My
are
teeth.
all the elements. This is Earth,
We still keeping the key though.
fire,
Right.
We still
wind,
keeping the key.
water,
We still
and
locked
heart.
in. We
These
get
are
half
all
a
the
point.
elements. Those
We
are all
get
the
half a
elements
point
right
for
there.
that.
Crazy.
We can come on
You can say that key for next for the new year.
Yeah.
Say the key for the new year.
Damn, I really think that's-
But it's definitely
Captain
Captain
Planet's
Planet
good.
because
Captain
this
Planet's
guy
good.
right here is the one.
My teeth.
Yep, my T is the one who keeps the
That's the
heart.
little Indian, right? No,
Yep.
the little Indian
One right here,
Yep,
right
yep,
here.
yep.
Yeah. It's Captain Planet though. Good show. Good show.
Great
Sucks
job.
with his weaknesses though.
Garbage.
Garbage.
Throw shit on them.
Here's the last one, y'all. Here's the last
Which of
one.
these cards is likely to be found in the standard deck?
What?
Which of these cards is least likely to be found in the standard deck? It's least likely.
6 of clubs, 10 of hearts, 9 of spades, 4 of diamonds.
This is a head cracker, by the way. That's why I made this the last one.
6. The 2 clubs at the bottom is upside down.
Okay. But the upside down is of course the line though.
But the hearts have upside down
Oh,
hearts
so I'm
too.
wrong.
They all have it.
I'm wrong.
I would go 4. The diamond.
4 diamonds.
D.
D, 4 diamond.
Yeah, I was just shooting a guess. I'm gonna go D.
You gonna take 4 diamond?
Yeah.
Let's see what chat got to say. Kitty says boom because she did Captain Planet. Baldoni said W Kitty with Baldoni for sure,
They
for
said
sure.
C, but Tony said C.
But Hollywood says B. Baldoni says C. Okay, Baldoni says C as 9 of spade. Hollywood says B because
Oh shit.
it's a 10 of heart.
He said, let me ask, what is the color of the hearts? You're not paying attention to hearts.
Right. Never black. Yeah.
That is fucking bananas.
That's bananas.
It's B, you already said it. Yeah, because hearts is not black.
Yeah, I was showing black.
Answer is B. 10 of hearts. The 10 of hearts should be a red card, as I just showed you.
Damn. For the slacking.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I like those.
You see how it transitions?
Yeah. 10 of heart. Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
We got some gamblers in the chat.
Right.
We got some gamblers. He said, wait, hold on now.
Yep. He says, let me ask what color is. Yep. Hollywood Gamer know they shit. Hollywood Gamer.
Wow.
Coach said, oh yeah. Who said, oh B, yeah, because the color, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So Candy.
Let's go, Hollywood. Shut the bomb for Hollywood. For getting that one. I didn't think nobody was gonna get that
was
one.
a good one.
Right.
Say Golden Crush is extra golden today.
Yeah.
You know,
Our guy Cam
Gotta
is
do it.
in. What up, Cam? Shut the bomb for Cam for
the last
popping in.
episode of the year, Cam.
Last episode of the Game Lounge for the year.
the year. Next time you see it, it'll be next
Great
year.
Combos chat. Thank you all for playing. Once again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year to all of you guys. Let's get back into it, y'all. So,
As of right now, no.
No, I'll be streaming. I'm gonna stream the New Year with you guys.
Honestly.
We're gonna watch the ball drop and pop some bubbly and all that shit. Because
right,
that's Wednesday night.
Yeah.
right.
So I'll be here watching the ball
Probably
drop.
with the kids.
Easy Gamer said, bet next Sunday I can stay for the first hour and 30 minutes of the stream, but I'm here today for the whole stream. Okay, cool. Dope,
Okay,
dope,
cool,
dope.
cool.
Cam said, I remember last year I was here. Yeah. Cam
Yeah.
was definitely here last year. Cam was definitely here.
Tips for sure.
Damn
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Facts. Who said that?
Hollywood.
Oh, damn right. Yeah, that's a fact.
Hollywood.
Tipsy, high, all that.
Yeah, all that good shit. Indulging in
All the shits.
all the shits.
All the shits.
Well, some,
Some of the shits.
some of the shits.
Some of the shits. Not all the shits.
not all the shits.
Not
Because
all the shits.
we're not doing no lines. We're not popping
No.
pills,
There's
We're not,
no line dancing over
yeah,
here.
no line dancing over here. No.
Let's get
We
let's
keep
play
our
this.
boots on the ground. Like,
So did you guys see the story of the guy who was about to get out of jail?
It's okay, BC game. That's alright.
So dude was about to get out of jail.
okay.
As supposedly how story goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we hear shit online, so supposedly. But dude chose to stay back because he just got a new boo.
In jail.
In jail.
In jail. You gotta
But
think
you know
about
what's
that.
crazy though? A lot of niggas can't. How long you been in
Now,
there?
about what y'all think about that though?
Well,
He was about to
depends.
get out. He was about to get
It
out.
depends though, because how long you
But
been
wait
in
a
there. Some
minute.
niggas been in there
Let me
for a
sprinkle
while.
some. Let me tell you how it is. They showed pictures of these niggas inside,
Oh, it's
booed up.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the comments, everybody's like, "That's a boy." Like
Really?
that's two dudes. The other
So
one
one-
look
Like a pure girl.
wouldn't fool me.
Mm.
We just throw that out there.
Right.
Oh. You know?
Oh,
Hell yeah! Hell
You
yeah!
got
The rapper, nigga.
I thought he
So-
stopped doing that. I thought he
Nah.
gave it to
Nah, you don't.
he doing it?
He don't.
Okay.
So what y'all think about that?
It
Though?
depends on how long he been in there though.
I
A lot
don't
of
think
niggas
he's
can't-
young. I don't think he looks young. He don't look.
Oh,
He's
okay.
not 30 yet.
Okay.
He's not 30 yet.
He a stupid ass
He
nigga.
look about 25.
You a stupid ass
They
nigga.
young.
Yeah, he's stupid.
Bro
Nasty.
said he's gonna. I think it was an extra 6 months.
That's not too bad.
Fuck.
It's not too
Did
bad.
you hear the circumstances of why he's staying?
Because a lot of niggas don't have lives outside of jail. Let's say he got no family, no friends, and he's just like, fuck it, if I go out there, I ain't gonna have nobody. At least I got somebody in here. But it depends on his situation.
I guess in terms of that
Like,
basic,
he ain't got
I
nobody.
get it.
He ain't got no family to come home to.
Nobody
No
don't love
kids.
But
him.
what if he does? You're assuming.
That's stupid.
Yeah, if nobody,
He does,
if he has nobody outside of the jail,
How we know bro don't got kids?
That's, I don't know.
he may.
Now, if he
25
got kids and all of that, then you a dumb nigga for some dick.
Nah.
He was about to go off.
For
For
some
some
for some
bold,
jail for some
crazy-
jail booty, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. But if he come
You want to
home
stay an
to
extra
nothing,
6 months away from your kids for some jail booty? It's
What y'all
crazy.
think? What y'all
Because
think?
I know some niggas that be in jail for like 40 years and they come out here and
No,
don't know
but
what the
listen,
fuck
if
going
you're
on.
in jail for 40 years, that's your life.
Yeah, that's why when they come out, they
When
don't
you,
know what
when
to
the
do.
last time you was in jail, time changed 3
So
times
much.
over.
Yes.
Niggas don't know what cell phone
You
Every
don't know
10
nothing.
years.
You don't
I had
know
a family
nothing.
member like that. He know what a cell phone was. He been in this since I was.
At that point, you don't know how to be free.
No.
You're usually being told what time to get up, what
Yeah,
time to
but
eat.
yeah.
You don't know how to be free.
How to be free.
Like, you don't know how to be free.
One of the OGs from my mom's building when I used to live with her. He came home a couple years ago, but he did. I remember when he went in. I was like 6,
Wow.
6, 7, playing Skelly on the block,
And then nigga be in there that
and I remember the story of how he went in. It was really bad. 7:30. He was crazy, crazy
Right,
dude.
right, right.
He came home, and I'm like, he's out.
They be scared out here. They
But
paranoid.
he
Yeah.
ain't know what to do. At the time in the 90s, it wasn't everybody had no iPhones and all that. He ain't know how to
Right.
work no
He
phone.
like iPhone.
He knew what a beeper was, bro.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He knew what a beeper was like.
He seen them shits on TV.
Right. So he was like, he don't know how to work no iPhone, or he don't know how to like do Uber Eats. He's still waving his hand and catch a taxi or whatever.
See what chat saying.
Crazy shit. So, BT Gamer said, hope you guys would allow me to stick around for the next 5 years of the game launch. Yeah.
That 5 years, come on now.
Yeah.
You shooting for the stars, I like that.
Yeah, 5
You said
years.
next 5 years. You goddamn right, BT.
We'll be here.
We'll be here and you'll be here.
Well, we may not be in Studio 200.
No,
we'll
we
probably
gonna
be in
get
a bigger
big. Oh yeah.
stand. We hopefully to be on somebody's TV station.
You understand what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, BT. God damn it. So let's get back to the original question.
Right.
So he chose to stay
Yeah.
for his new
But how
boo.
can you make that choice?
You can, because they parole you 6 months early or not. Basically, go be
I
here.
guess he
but
chose
they
to
can't
do his
just
whole
say-
time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I said, he's that bad. You can't just take him a bed because you just want to.
Now, if they for if that's the case, they say we're releasing you because of overcapacitation inside the prison. You got to go.
Right,
There's
yeah.
no if or 6 7 as kids say. There is that.
In this,
But he thought it's too low.
I guess.
He thought it's too low. I can't.
I guess.
I never said I was mad. I never said
About it.
I ain't going for it. I'm out of there.
Bro said I'm staying here, right here.
With my man.
Well,
Nope.
Stop.
No.
I ain't say that.
Stop.
BT Gamer said, if not, I understand. I also understand some people don't like having me around for too long because of my ADHD.
We ain't worried about that. We
We-
worried about good
we all
company and a
got
good
you.
time.
Yeah, we all worry
We ain't
about a
worried
good
about none of
time,
that.
bro. As long
We
as
ain't
you
worried-
just understand that it's more than just you, we cool.
Yeah, we just here for a good time, bro.
That's all.
We ain't judging none of all that bullshit. Here for a good time.
Dude, some people got cataracts. Some people got addictions. You
All
got
types of
ADHD. So I got a eating disorder. I like to eat a lot of food.
I'm
Cool.
gonna ask a person, but it's off the
No,
topic
no.
of
We're gonna
the
ask that question. We're
It's
gonna ask
about
that
a
question.
person
Hold on,
in
let's
the
see.
industry.
Wait. You guys have a favorite moment of 2025? He said, I understand that. Okay, cool. We're gonna get right back to that part. Then we'll start.
Clarissa Shields. How you feel about it?
I tap that.
Not that. The way she acts.
Yo.
This nigga here, how she act.
What's-
How you think of her as a person?
I like her, and there's certain things I don't like about her. But overall, I fucks with her.
I
That's
don't
the
know.
women's champion, man. Put some respect on her name.
Yeah, she's the they said the quote.
She
What does she
cornball
do?
to me. She just do
She's not the
corny
coolest
things.
person.
That's exactly
Not
what
the
it
coolest
is.
person.
She-
But why?
Late,
The way she can move,
Like what?
She
lately
keeps
her
doing
things she's
things
doing is
Like what?
real
What's she
for
weird,
doing?
bro.
social media, like
First of all, do you guys know who Clarissa Shields is?
Right.
If you do or don't, tap it.
Yeah, just type
That's
in
why I feel like
Google
with
Clarissa
Dr.
Shields or
Yeah,
Wolf,
but she's not.
female
But she
boxer.
keeps like yesterday or today she put up a post about she put her money up, showing how much money she got, and then she went shopping at Louis Vuitton and put her
Right, right.
receipts of how much she paid. Who
You mean
does
like what?
that?
All the other corny motherfuckers?
No, who do
Nah.
that? Nobody do that. The way
Bro, I
she
seen
did.
plenty of people walking through the mall with
But she
bags.
up-
It's the same shit.
No,
Nah, it's a difference between walking through the mall with
and
bags or
posting your receipts.
you actually got couple $100,000, whatever, not $100,000, but a couple of hundreds in your hand, and you peeling them off, and then you show
Floyd Mayweather
The
pictures
does
of-
that.
That's what-
He's the
that's
only
what I'm
one.
saying. Floyd
he's the only
Mayweather
one
does
that was doing that.
But
But he
then-
wasn't really. He was doing it with flashy cars.
And then her
and-
caption said,
and doing other crazy
auntie.
shit.
Now, a couple days ago, Remy put a picture up, and everybody was in her comment saying
So
she
you're a
thinks
Remy
her-
fan.
Of course.
Bias as hell.
No, she's a
Bias as hell.
cornball,
Remy
bro.
be doing,
You got the man
Remy
already.
be doing corny shit too.
I'm
No.
a Pat fan.
Remy, me too.
No, she don't.
Remy be doing corny shit too.
No, she
Stop
don't.
it.
What she did? What
Stop
she did?
it.
What she
First
did?
of all, Easy, the black captain.
Why keep talking about that? She don't even post him. Like, she don't be like, me and
Come
him
on.
is out to dinner.
Outta
She don't
here.
do that.
Easy, the black
No,
captain.
stop.
I've
See,
been,
now you
I've
biased.
been wanting
You
to bring
biased
this
because
up.
of Fat Pools.
Yes.
See, no, that's
And-
corny. No,
I'm a Pat fan too.
And-
no.
You,
But honestly-
you was in jail. This nigga was holding you down.
But I honestly
I've
feel
been
like
with
with
nah,
Fat
fuck
Pools-
that.
No,
You was
no,
in
we talking about
jail.
Clarissa
This
Shields
nigga
now.
was holding you down. And Easy, the block captain. We're not gonna talk about that though, sis.
No, I'm talking about Clarissa and Pat.
Some was out here talking good about Remy every chance he get. while she was locked
We
up.
don't know what he was doing. She
W-
was
exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
and that's
We
the
don't
argument.
Yeah, that's true.
That
No, fuck that. We
Yeah, that's
don't
true.
know.
right.
There's nothing we could say. Oh, we saw. We don't know. But what we
I
do
don't
know
how
is
easy that-
That
you
she was
came
out
out
here
you
wilding.
gotta,
and went to
allow
Easy the
that.
Block Captain. We gonna let
My
that
whole thing
slide.
about Papoose and Clarissa, I feel like she's more in love with him than he is with her.
I think
'Cause he be
homie
tryna-
be chilling. He had the same attitude with Remy. That's just how he is. He's always just chilling.
I don't think he
It's the
likes her.
same. I don't,
He
I
low
don't
key
agree.
They
is
don't
an
get
average
she's in
chill
love
dude.
with. He's in love with her as much as she is with him.
I don't really see that. He's always had that laid back. I'm
Because
just
you know
chilling
what's
vibe.
crazy? She told him to sign the papers. She'll pay for the lawyer. She don't want nothing from him, no money, no nothing. She take all the bills, just sign the paper. Why you won't
Sign the paper that say what?
Divorce.
Who, Remy?
Remy
Yeah,
said
yeah.
she'll pay for the lawyer. She don't want no child support at all. She want nothing from him. All she wants him to do is sign the paper. He won't sign
I
the
didn't hear that
motherfucking
part.
paper.
I did,
I showed
and
the video.
I did, and honestly, if that is the case, what you waiting on, Pat?
That's what makes it feel like
Because
you
it make
wanna
it
be
seem
with
like
her.
you're
You still want her, but you want
you're not ready to sign because you don't know how this might go. It looks that way.
Yeah.
It could come off looking that way. But like I said, I'm a Pat fan, and I'm with you on that. You ain't never hear this dude while she was in jail all those years sliding on nothing.
I'm
The
giving
fir-
her
Ain't-
that.
she come out and
Ain't
do what?
no Me Too movement on him at all
And she
from
come out and do what?
nobody.
I think we let that shit slide under the. Everybody, we need a good man. We need a good man. This man was done dirty.
Yeah.
That's where we gotta start that conversation
Right.
every time.
See, I'm not bringing you both.
We gotta start that conversation
Every
there
single time, because
he did
why-
nothing wrong.
What was
That
stopping
we
him?
know. We don't
That's
know
the
what
whole
their
point.
relationship was.
Yeah, but
though.
we know what you did. That's it. We can only
That's
judge
the
what we
crazy
know.
part.
We only know, and like you said, what she's done. We don't know what the intimacy of the other relationship is or not. We don't know that part.
We don't know.
But we do know that you came out and y'all was all over hip hop and it was a
Yeah,
thing.
she came out
She
and said-
dropped the album, which he said, "All right, you drop your album, give me my boy, or give me my girl." I think it was a girl. They
But
had.
she came out and said how she was cheating when she was in jail with his baby mother. Now, I never been proven. That's what Jimmy said. She got
It's possible. I don't know. But
This
it's
is possible, but why won't baby mama,
None of this was
cop to
publicated.
that?
None of this is in the line.
The baby mama ain't
Right.
cop
What
to
you
that.
did, the whole world know about.
Right.
Period.
What loyalty does the baby mama have to Remy? Why won't she just cop to it? She ain't gonna cop to it because it probably
Don't
really
mean it
is
didn't-
nothing.
Don't mean it didn't happen.
No, man,
It doesn't mean it didn't happen. I can't argue that. But guess what?
we
None of
can't
this is
argue.
public information.
We can't
If
argue
he
that
was doing
Easy the
something,
Block
he was
Captain
doing
was
it on the
sliding
low.
on her.
Whenever we saw him, he represented you.
Right.
That's true. I don't like Clarissa Shields.
That's cool. He does.
She too cocky.
For-
He
We
don't
need she
even
too
kiss her in
cocky.
public.
She's the women's
what
champion.
women she
She's
that
supposed.
don't mean shit.
Suppose she could be cocky.
You know what's crazy though? Be
Tell
honest.
Remy
Nobody
run
knew,
up. Tell
But
Remy run up.
nobody knew who she was until
Tell-
she started
it
fucking
doesn't-
with Pat.
That's not true. She's the women's champion.
No, I didn't know nothing, and nothing about her.
I gotta say
She was
that
not
too,
popping
bro.
like that until
Not
she started.
in-
She
dating
was.
I
Pat.
She
knew who
wasn't.
she
She wasn't a public figure or like publicly celebritized. Oh, celebritized. Like a celebrity amongst different people,
But I get that you're in a.
except for in
Dating
the
a
boxing
married
community.
man. Bitch, you
Right,
dating
that's
a married
cool.
nigga. Shut
Still
up.
had her own name and her own money.
She
And
got
that's
all
what
name
I'm saying.
on
She
that's
got her
fine.
money, so
But
why you
I'm saying-
waiting till now to show what you spending? Like, what
Because
you
she got
doing
more
it for?
attention now.
That's stupid. If I got money, I'm not putting my receipts up. You don't see Beyonce putting receipts up, JC. You don't see nobody that get money posting their receipts.
I mean,
From
that's-
Louis
I'm-
Vuitton,
I'm
she
I'm
spent
not
like
saying it's
30K.
I'm not saying it's not cheesy. It is cheesy.
She spent like 30K.
But that's not-
inside
I
of.
I never thought she was mad cool.
Yeah, I don't
I don't fucking hate
She's
her.
a cheese ball.
I don't see nothing wrong with the girl to that extent.
I like her.
She can
I
be a little
just
corny.
That's not. Don't,
I like her, but
You
I
got
honestly
the
think that
bitch
she
already.
was so focused on being the best of the best in the boxing community that she really didn't get a chance to do a relationship or be a regular
and
person.
And it's her first boyfriend.
Like it's her first
She
boyfriend,
getting to live.
right?
Oh.
Like everybody knows Michael Jackson. You see Michael Jackson's story. He was always, even as a kid, he
Right.
was getting beat and be, had to be the best singer, be the best performer. He didn't get a chance to become be a child,
Be a regular
But
be
person.
a
thing
regular
is,
person.
basically,
So
I
once
told
he
him, I
finally
said-
got to become older and got multi-millions, now he wants to be a kid. He's still trying to.
But my whole
Enjoy
thing
his
is crazy
childhood.
about it is that my whole thing is, what if Papoose and Remy work it out? You won't be hurt as a motherfucker.
She-
You tight.
I think she might kill herself on some real
No, don't
shit.
say that.
Like
Don't say that.
because she put so much.
I don't think.
That's
effort.
gonna crush her to the
I
core.
don't think for Papoose that'd be a good move.
It
No.
won't be, but
That'd
they
be
still
a-
married. You're
that'd
not
be
signing this paper for
That'd
some
be a
reason.
public sucker ass move.
Yeah.
It would be. But sign the papers. Because by you not signing the front paper, she keep telling you to sign it. It looks like you really don't want her. You're just stringing her along.
Chat
They
says.
talking about the movie, her
Avatar 3.
Avatar, the DC Gamer asked the question.
Okay. They talking about Avatar.
Scroll up a little bit.
Oh, the new one that came out.
Yeah, new one dropped. Yeah.
I know. I didn't even see the first one.
Damn. What you waiting on?
No,
I didn't even know it was an Avatar 3 either.
in my movies.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the other Avatar, not the blue people. The other two.
Yeah.
BT
that-
Gamer
that-
said he said his
his favorite moment
Avatar
was Avatar 3.
of 2020. What about 2025 favorite moment? Shit, the anniversary show was up there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So we made that happen.
Right.
Oh, we put on a whole.
I got a
show.
couple though because it's the anniversary show. It's
I
when
was
we
saying
went to
vacation.
Universal,
Yeah, that was my
Universal
shit.
for our
that was
vacation.
my shit. Going to Mario,
Uh,
like a big ass kid.
Earlier that year. We didn't get the car that year. Earlier this year. I had bought another car earlier this year. Oh, when I stuck into them bastards in April.
We was right. It was mad people here on the anniversary.
I had-
So
I
y'all
had-
was deep that night.
Yep.
It was mad.
I had stuck
Mad niggas was in here.
stuck into them
Thanksgiving
Google
too.
bastards. Yep.
Thanksgiving
For
was
sure.
nice too.
Thanksgiving was
Yeah.
nice
You said
too.
which one now?
When I stuck into them Google bastards in April.
Favorite 2025 moment? Oh yeah.
Yep. Took back.
Oh yeah, Superman movie 2.
So
Superman
yeah,
That was
Superman
fun.
movie.
That
We was lit on that
fun.
one. That was a
Yeah,
nice one.
Yeah.
So we all went for a group. There's a movie coming out. Oh, Street Fighter. We gotta go see that.
Yeah.
We all gotta go
When
see
is
that.
that? When is that come out?
Next
Next
year.
year,
Because Mario come out
Fall,
in April.
I think.
Mario
Oh,
come out
yeah.
in April.
Mario's in April. You got Supergirl as well next year.
Supergirl.
Yeah.
Next year's
It's a lot
stacked.
of
Next
movies,
year got a
right,
lot
I'm
of video
saying.
games too.
And
Yes.
games.
There's a shit ton of video games.
Yeah.
If you got Game Pass, next year
Next year.
there's
It's
a
crazy.
shit ton of shit pillowing right into Game
Yeah.
Pass.
Right into it.
Like a lot of
get
big-
Game Pass, get PlayStation Plus, get all that good shit because you're gonna need it.
It's gonna funnel right
You
into
gonna
that
need
shit.
it.
Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out this summer. I didn't know.
That's this year.
Oh, that's the new
too.
Tobey
New
Maguire.
Yeah,
Well,
Jesus,
no,
next summer.
That's not
he's
Toby.
gonna be in. Toby's gonna be in it.
Oh
but
yeah, I
it's
did see
the
that. Yeah, I did see
it's
that.
the continuation
Oh,
of.
Toby's in it.
Yeah, they were saying Toby is making an appearance in it again. I don't know about Andrew Garfield, but I know they say for sure Toby's making an entrance inside of Brand New Day.
That's fire. He said, "Bro, movies and gaming gonna cook in 2026. Hell yeah!
Hell yeah.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
big
so many
2026.
games.
Hell yeah.
So many games, so many. Pragmata comes out in April.
What's problematic?
I played the demo. That's the one with the
Oh, what you
with
was
the little
playing?
girl,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
little robot girl on his back.
Yeah, yeah,
But she
yeah.
got Android of.
Grand Theft Auto maybe. 'cause
Oh,
at this
my.
point they make
Grand Theft Auto.
28.
Stop waiting on it, y'all.
Nah, it's gonna come out 2026.
I was having
it
that
ain't.
conversation with
It's gonna
him
come out
yesterday.
2026.
When it gets here, I'll believe it when I see it.
They got the Halo 2 remake,
Okay.
remaster, whatever.
Okay.
Got that coming out as well. They got a bunch of shit coming out. 2026.
Onimusha's coming.
I think. Oh, Tokon,
Tokan.
the Invincible fighting game,
Uh-huh.
that's coming out as well.
He said, "Did y'all see that?"
The Avatar
did
fighting
y'all see
game.
The Avatar
that
fighting game.
teaser for- Yeah, I think we watched it here. The Avengers Doomsday. Did you watch it?
Jeff said, did y'all see that teaser trailer for Avengers Doomsday?
Yes.
Yeah, we saw it. And then BT Gamer said, no, Tobey Maguire is making an appearance in Avengers Doomsday, Spider-Man. Brand New Day has the person who played Max in Stranger Things in it, and the Hulk in it, and the Punisher.
Oh, okay.
So wait, there's a new person playing the Spider-Man?
No, I guess he's saying he said no. Tobey Maguire is making an appearance in Avengers Doomsday,
Right.
not the
Brand
Spider-Man
New Day
movie.
has the person who played Max in Stranger Things.
Right.
Okay. I remember
That's which one is that?
that. Well, he had the Bob.
I think I
One of the characters of Stranger Things.
But so he's gonna be the new Spider-Man?
No, I guess he's just in it.
Okay.
He's playing somebody in it.
All right.
Cammy said the red-haired girl.
Oh, okay. Redhead girl. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Who the hell is that?
Down there, said it wasn't bad, but the middle just kind of dragged on for 3. I heard it's just visually good.
What?
Talking about Avatar, yeah.
It's always
Why
visually
don't we
good.
talking about the Odyssey? Odyssey 2.
What's that?
Odyssey, Mario Odyssey 2.
That's coming out this year?
It's coming out
2026?
26, yeah. I think that's what the Undavi's talking about.
Yeah, the movie, the Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, Mario Odyssey movie.
Okay.
That's what I said. That comes out in April.
No, that's Mario Galaxy, not Odyssey.
Oh, right.
Oh, right.
Right.
No, he's right.
No, the
But
Odyssey.
but Super
You said
Mario
no, the Odyssey.
Odyssey.
Movie.
What Odyssey?
What Odyssey movie? It's Galaxy.
No, I think he's talking about a different
Yeah, you're not talking about Mario.
Odyssey. He's not talking about Mario at all.
Talking about something
Oh, okay. So
The
what's
new
that?
Christopher Nolan movie.
Oh, I like Christopher Nolan stuff.
Okay. I didn't know another Odyssey thing was coming out
So they
either.
what's that? The movie?
Yeah.
He said the Christopher Nolan.
Mhm. The
Odyssey.
Diggs, what's up, bro? Top of all for the Diggs.
Yo, Dig, what it do? See, did the trailer for that?
Okay,
The Odyssey trailer for the movie. The
Okay.
movie's coming out next year. There should be a trailer out.
should be. Let me find it. Let me
And
find
I'm curious
it.
to see what it is. man.
Right.
Let me find it, y'all. Help me find
Yo,
it.
Dig, what's going on with you, man? Happy holidays, bro.
Yes, indeed.
Ain't
Happy
seen my guy
holidays.
Dig in a minute.
Yes. Yo, real quick before I find it, Diggs, what's up, bro? Can we get some? I mean, when you get some time, I know you're a busy man, but can we get some more of Ace Attorney? Me, you, and Kitty. Can we get some more Ace
Come
Attorney?
on, man. Come on, Dig. The people asking for some Ace Attorney, bro.
Some
What you
Ace
gonna do?
Attorney. I want to jump back in. I'm tapped in. I'm definitely tapped in. Like when they play Ace Attorney, I was never an Ace
You
Attorney
tapped in with
person.
Dig?
I had jumped in one stream and they had me roped in, bro. They had me reeled all the way in. I was like, oh, this shit is really
He said
fire.
coming soon.
Coming soon. Say no more. I don't gotta even say nothing else. Thank you. I
Shit,
appreciate
Before you
you.
do it, if you got time, pop in on the lounge and let us know.
Yeah, facts. Okay, let's find
Odyssey.
Odyssey. Oh shit. Put the people in there. Oh shit, yeah. 20 most anticipated UE5 games. Odyssey.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Trailer. Okay. All right, cool. So let's take a look at the trailer. Right here.
I guess that's it.
After years of war,
Looks pretty cool.
Looks like 300.
Yeah.
no one could stand between my men.
I love shit like this.
Xerxes and
All that shit.
yeah.
And also,
Sparta kick your ass in the chest.
That's how my
That is Tom Holland.
not even me.
And he Snoop so young.
Does mean you will come back.
I think it's easier to
What if
travel
I
on
can't?
water.
Yeah, but boats like that, where do they sleep? Not a big
Come on,
boat.
July 17th.
Yeah, July 17th.
That looks pretty epic, actually.
Yeah, July 17th is the release date there. 7/17/26. Looks good. Looks good.
Looks epic.
Yeah, looks real epic.
What the hell was that? It said that they released IMAX tickets for this a year before the movie releases, and they're reselling for $200. Damn.
Man,
Is the movie expected to be that damn good? What the fuck?
$200
It better be
plus
that good.
a
What the
ticket.
fuck? It's good. I like Christopher Nolan, but goddamn.
$200. That shit better come with the food and all of that
That's
together.
crazy.
Like, boy, no way I'm gonna pay $200 and then
Just
still
to
gotta
see
pay
the first week.
another $40 for
That's
popcorn and
ridiculous.
nachos
Nah.
and drinks. Nah,
Now I'll wait till I can get a
The
ticket.
movies cost that much.
No, that's people reselling it.
Oh, see, no.
He said they released tickets a year before IMAX
Kingdom
tickets a
Hearts.
year before the people bought all the tickets.
Right.
Now they're reselling
I
it.
hate people who do that.
Oh hell
No,
no.
resellers are motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's annoying. Stop.
Yeah, even the resellers that did it for them gamers, the Gamer 11s, the Black and
They
They
do
did
it
it for
for
PlayStation 5.
they do
when
it for
first
shit like
came out.
Avengers. Then they don't go buy up all the tickets and resell them shits.
Yeah.
But I know people that was looking for
PC Gamer
tickets.
said Kingdom Hearts 4 is only supposed to be coming out. I was talking, we talked about that yesterday.
Yeah,
Say what?
It takes so long for
Kingdom Hearts.
It
We were
don't even
talking
be
about
slapping
Kingdom
like
Hearts
that.
yesterday. Kingdom Hearts,
What, the video game?
yeah. So because it took so long to release 3 from 2,
He lost interest.
I lost a lot of
I
interest.
knew that, but sometimes
A
when
lot
games
of
come out
interest.
and
It
takes
took
20
like
years,
15 plus years, bro.
And I told him the only reason why niggas is only gonna
Like,
play their photos because they still play it. So
I
it's gonna be
personally
on
beat
that.
Kingdom Hearts 2 on PS2. Boy, no way I'm waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 to come out on PS5, boys.
That's
Like,
crazy.
Come on now.
fuck
That's
no.
generations
Yeah,
later.
come on now.
That's crazy.
Boy, no way. And Grand Theft Auto is following the same bullshit right now because I brought Grand Theft Auto on PS3. Why am I still waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6?
But Grand Theft Auto always gonna sell. Niggas gonna always play that because
Yeah,
they're still
that
playing.
ain't gonna not sell.
Niggas is waiting.
That-
for
Niggas is
that's
still
what-
playing 5 online crazy.
Yeah, they're
Right,
still
so
playing.
that's
That's
what
why it has
makes
so
me
much.
either
No,
way.
it has good replayability. Kingdom Hearts did too. But
He
what
said,
the fuck?
We all gonna be 60. That's
Nah.
a fact. When GTA
Kingdom
sells
Hearts
themselves.
don't have
That's a fact.
replayability like Grand Theft Auto though.
It don't.
No.
It don't.
No.
It don't.
hell
Because
no.
Grand Theft Auto has a whole lot more. It's a whole better game,
It's
obviously.
online mission.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a better game overall. Like even with 2K, 2K comes out every year, and people still buy that shit every year.
Every
The
year.
same legendary package,
Every
$120,
year, bro.
$150 every year. Like guaranteed, ESPN is guaranteed to get most niggas money for $120,
Call of Duty.
$150 because they buying that
Call of
legendary
Duty, same
edition.
shit.
And the legendary edition just be having either Kobe on it or Jordan on it, or you may see LeBron on
Some
it.
shit.
So one of the goats.
What are the goats?
You wanted to check what happened to you the other day with your Switch?
What happened with the Switch?
Oh my God, she want me to tell the story. It's
Cam
gonna
said
make
PS2 had 3 GTA V, and had
Yes.
3 PlayStation.
it did. It definitely had 3
It
GTAs.
did.
It did. It's crazy, bro. It's crazy. Why should we have 3 GTAs on PS2 or 3 and then have to wait like almost 20 years,
That's
bro?
People keep playing this one. If they stop playing this shit, they won't keep dragging it.
Almost
They're not
20
losing no money
years.
because people keep playing
They
5.
gonna keep
They're not
doing
losing no
that.
money.
Stop playing
It don't matter how far they keep pushing it back. They're making so much money off still people playing 5.
Yeah, you can wait. Shit,
They
you can
get
wait.
basically.
Let me.
Smart
And then the
business move,
anticipation for 6 is through the roof. They know
Right.
they got $1 billion
bro. It's a smart
coming.
business move, bro. I'll do the same shit.
Retro said I've been helping on the music for Kingdom Hearts 4. Really?
Wow.
Ooh.
Man, you see the boxing?
Superstar in the chat.
Wow.
We gotta
What
come
the
to
fuck?
Norway. We gotta come to Norway.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
We gotta come to Norway.
He said, "What the fuck?
What the fuck?
We
Like,
got-
what?
Like, yeah,
What do
just,
you mean?
just casual. Like, I just was strumming.
That's great. What
I
do
was
you
just,
mean?
I was
Like,
just in the lab, just
You gotta explain more on that,
doing
bro.
shit
Like,
for Kingdom Hearts 4.
yeah,
Yeah,
like that's
No, we got a
crazy.
superstar in the chat.
We got a dead ass superstar right
We-
here.
he's a whole
Shout out
celebrity,
to
but
retro. That's crazy.
he takes time away from his busy celebrity lifestyle to come
To
and
be
kick it
here
with us at the game
lounge.
lounge on
Fire,
Sundays.
bro.
It's so
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Give it up for Retro, man. It's,
Wow.
it
That's
is
big
crazy.
business.
Kitty said, and Kingdom Hearts 3 was so lazy. It was.
See?
It wasn't good.
See?
it was
No,
mad.
nah.
It was mad.
And it's probably because they waited 20 years to make another one.
I didn't even beat it. I played some, got into. I was like, can't get into it. Can't get into it because I'm
But what you forgot what
Nah.
the previous one was
Yeah,
about.
but it was so long.
I'm like Don Davis said I feel that CJ we all going to be 60 when GTA 7 comes out.
Right,
Facts.
bring the game
Cam said
out.
PS.
7.
Yeah.
I ain't even go. I ain't.
I'm be like, man, back in them days when
Yeah,
Grove Street,
GTA
Grove
7,
Street,
you
bullshit. Like
We're gonna be complaining the
Mad
same way we
country.
complained about 5. Why 6 still here?
we sit here in our 80s crunchy talking about some
GTA
Vice City.
7 is crazy.
It's crazy, right, bro? Cam said PS2 and 3 had GTAs. 5 and had 3 PlayStation. BTA Gamer said GTA 6 might get delayed. Again, I heard Don Davis said one company I don't blame for taking long is Rockstar. They always deliver, in my opinion,
Yeah,
even
but
if I
goddamn
don't
though.
like
Yeah,
certain
it's too
games.
long, though.
But goddamn though.
Too
BK
damn
just
long,
said,
Don.
no,
Too
2K
damn
said,
long.
Did y'all heard how much gigs this shit gonna take?
BK said no
No.
2K standard.
You
What-
gonna
what
have
did
to
just-
buy a whole
what-
nother
what-
fucking memory for it, bro.
Yeah, it
It's
says it's gonna be like 250.
That's crazy.
250 gigs of storage.
250.
It's crazy.
The
Work.
game come. What happened when you get DLCs and shit?
Yeah, you gotta get more.
Crazy work.
It needs its own save
You
system.
need- right? Yes.
God
Yes.
damn. 250.
Yeah, that's what they were saying because Call of Duty already is like 150, bro.
Yeah, Call of Duty bugging too.
Call of Duty already is like
be
150,
bugging.
bro.
Wow.
So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's
Call
why I
of Duty's
play
already
Call
like
of Duty through the
150.
cloud. I'm
And
not
if
that
you got the
invested in it.
DLCs and all of the extra attachments and shit, because you can buy gun attachments and kits for it,
The
you're
system
talking
don't
about
come built for
160,
that, man.
175, bro.
That's crazy.
Crazy work. Retro said, I've listened to some of the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack and it's fire. Ooh. Well, off stream, Retro. Let me see. Kitty said, damn it, Retro. I said, yeah, composer was here last year and she gave me a sneak peek.
Wow.
Ooh.
He know people.
Yeah, he know a lot
He
of
know people. We know you.
Yeah.
That's what-
We know
That's
you.
all right.
We
That's
gotta
all
get
right.
you here.
Yeah.
We gotta get you here.
Yeah.
Interview and all. Man.
Yeah.
Stop playing with
Tell
it.
me
Yeah.
you're not.
Take,
Whole
take,
superstar right
yeah,
here.
yeah. Take some time out of your busy day.
We
Fly
gotta
your
get
private
you
jet.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jump on the helicopter.
We're gonna have to build a little patio at the top.
I got a
here.
backyard. You can land right in the backyard.
Yeah.
Come on in. We
Right.
gotta get you here. I'm serious though.
You gotta land like Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible style. Just come on down like this.
Listen, we need them here.
Or 007.
You understand what I'm saying? Through the lasers and all that. He said, I feel like we might have to wait until 2027. Nah.
And I agree with BT Gamer.
No.
They gonna say, my bad, we're
Nah.
sorry, we gotta push it
I
further.
think that pushed it too far.
That's too much.
That's too much.
They pushing it too far already.
Exactly.
This
I
is
think-
already
no.
far.
2027 will be crazy.
The Dick said I need to make a
So,
guest
bro,
drop
same
in too.
thing. We need
Facts.
you here,
Come
bro.
on.
Come on,
Come
brother.
on here.
Shit.
You come to New York, come tap in, bro. Please.
We got the interview section set up for you. We're
We
going to
got
get
all-
some bubbly popping.
Yeah,
We're going to take some shots.
Yes. For sure.
Right
for
here on the
sure.
game line. You know what I'm
We're
saying?
gonna get you right. BK Jeff in here.
B-
BK Jeff know what's up.
BK Jeff, what's going on with this interview, dog?
Yeah.
Right, what's happening?
Can we
brother?
get laughed to death with BK Jeff? Can we get
Like,
that?
we've been trying to get this guy here.
Can we get
And
that?
he's been here.
He's been here.
We just can't
He
get it
has,
for
though.
an interview.
He's been
This
here.
motherfucker is elusive.
He said
Yeah.
you booked and busy.
Yeah, he a booked and busy guy
It's
too.
crazy work. Can we get you up here
He's a booked and
for the
busy guy
interview,
too.
my guy? Like, come on
And,
now.
and even Cam, let Cam.
He
He
Cam.
said-
say
waiting
waiting
on
on
y'all.
us, you
So
bugging.
y'all better-
Yeah,
You
yeah.
bugging.
He's saying it right now. Y'all pick a date for him to come.
Get outta here.
Set the
bro.
day I'll be there. All right, let me pull
God.
up some calendar. let's talk about it into the new year.
We're
gonna
gonna
this
we gonna
shit
get you
going.
for the new year. We're gonna get you for the new year because you wilding out.
We got to get Cam up here too, cause he all the way in
All the
Brazil,
way in
but
Brazil.
he be wanting to tap in. But Cam be busy sometimes too.
We
Like,
gotta get Cam on with
we
we
gotta-
start doing
yeah.
the virtual interviews.
yeah, definitely.
Cam Glut.
We got to run another game of Cam's so you can get your run back to kick my ass.
Yeah.
I kicked your ass last
nah,
time.
We ain't gonna talk about
So
it.
that-
Yes, Kitty, please.
We gotta
ain't
get
gonna
that
talk
run
about
back.
it.
Gotta get that run
Yes,
back.
Kitty.
No,
Yes,
so we need
Kitty
you
wanna come
here.
on there. Yeah,
We need you
come,
here.
come on.
That'll
come
be
on.
big.
Right.
That'll be
Kitty,
big.
Yeah,
right.
Kitty
That'll
come
be
on,
big.
and
Day
we
one.
get Kitty's women's perspective. What you want?
Yes.
Oh Lord.
Yes.
It could be the girls against the guys.
Yes.
What?
Oh, for us.
We gonna tell y'all
We're
apart.
gonna be in trouble.
Rip your
Aw.
ass
We're gonna be
apart.
in trouble. But I tell you what,
Hey, wait a
I'ma
minute.
study.
That's
Hey,
slow,
wait a
that's
minute.
slow.
Hey,
That
yo.
was crazy. Rip our
You
ass
could've just
apart.
let it
Whoa.
slide.
Nah,
babe.
nah.
God
Hey,
damn.
yo.
Hey, yo.
What's going on here? What's going on? We ain't gonna let that one slide. You got to be more careful.
You got to
Stop
be more
saying
careful.
that stupid ass
You
shit.
got to be more
Guess what, chat? Clip it.
Oh, God.
You go. It's your turn to
Wait
go
a minute.
viral.
Oh, we gonna
Yes,
Team
Kitty,
Monet
facts.
on their ass.
They're not ready.
Oh,
They're not ready.
we ready.
Yeah, we ready.
The
Yeah.
duel right here,
Yeah.
undefeated.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Undefeated.
please. Oh,
Undefeated.
please.
The final round gonna be worth 100 points each. Street Fighter.
Yeah. Don't worry, the digs. We can get some sparkling apple cider for you too. We got sparkling apple cider for her. So
Yep.
we get some
Mhm.
sparkling apple cider for you too.
Right now she's
Or
taking
some sparkling roaches grape.
heavy shots of water back
Right,
there.
right.
Uh huh.
What's-
With that.
Jimmy said, can I get an interview when I come to visit on the game?
Who said that?
VT Gamer.
Of course.
Yeah, come on in. Come
Of
on
course.
over here. Get
I
you,
don't
get
see
you
why the hell
right.
not. You better come sit on over here with GK and chat it up.
Right. You one of the YNs, so We
You
had
got,
well, a couple YNs. We
got
had
a few.
YN,
Got
you
a
know,
few.
Broke Nation YN number
you
1.
got Freddy Fives.
Freddie Fives YN number 2. We had Julius, the
Yeah,
chat
Julius
YN.
officially a part of the crew.
Yes. So yeah.
God damn, it's a lot of YNs about the place though.
So what's YNs?
A lot
Couple
of
YNs.
YNs
Yeah.
about the place.
Retro said I'll check my calendar for
Hey,
y'all.
listen, make it happen.
Yeah, man.
Make it happen. Because the day you come, we can't just be a regular episode.
Yeah,
No,
no,
it
that gotta
can't.
be something.
We gotta do it right.
We gotta get you to sing for us.
Right.
Gotta come with the guitar.
Well,
All
we
that.
gotta let him go in. He gotta be on his shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm
He
saying.
gotta be on
We
his
need all
shit.
that over
We
here.
need to
You
get
can't
him
just
in
show
there,
up.
getting all of that in there.
Gotta have the whole shebang. We got
Yeah.
a whole backyard. We can set the whole crew up and shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Over here, because I live in a very rough neighborhood.
Glut is coming to Ohio, so I'm gonna see him before y'all. Oh, Glut going to Ohio.
Coming to Ohio.
Top of bar for Glut going to Ohio. That's what's up. That's what's up.
My man Glut.
So we got to go to Ohio.
I was
When's
just
he
about-
going?
I was just about to say, don't make it sound like we can't show up in Ohio.
We
You know what
can't-
I'm saying?
We can't show up in Ohio.
That's what I'm saying. We can.
When's he going?
It's
I
like
don't know. She's I don't know.
sometime 2026.
Okay.
He said I only can't drink alcohol because I don't know how to work alcohol. That's cool. I don't
That's
drink.
fine.
Yeah, that's fine, bro. We can get you some sparkling apple
You got
cider
juice,
too.
water, or if you want some serious rough soda,
Yeah.
Are we going to a
We can
wedding?
get you, we can get you some root beer.
yeah,
Ew.
That'll be the closest alcoholic
that's it.
drink you'll get.
Get some
Root
root
beer.
beer.
You get root beer.
Yeah, I don't know when he's going. Yeah, he's coming to a wedding on this side,
Ah, okay, cool.
so he'll be on this side for a little bit. Hey man, we might just make it happen.
Cool.
How far is Ohio
22 is
anyway?
gonna be a-
Ohio? Let's see how far Ohio is. Let's pull it up in chat. I mean, pull it up on the screen. So, let's see. Ohio from New York City.
By plane, by driving, by car is cool.
That car is crazy.
8 hours.
That's not bad. if I
That's
drive.
not dry.
And
That's
17 minutes driving.
That's not bad.
That's not bad.
Florida is more.
Hell yeah, Florida more, but nobody want to drive 8 goddamn hours. Can
That's
we see the
not bad.
We could
biplane?
get on
Plane?
one of them train and bus systems,
Yeah.
and we could go across town, nigga.
It's
Yeah,
1 or 2 hours.
It's
flying.
1 to 2 hours flying. We can do the one as well.
That's quick as fuck.
Yeah.
What's that like? $50?
Yeah, we get a little
Get one of them little brrrr,
get a spirit flight,
little spirit, right?
little
Exactly.
spirit
Yeah,
flight,
we'll get no-
first class spirit flight.
First class spirit though,
Oh, yeah.
not in the back spirit.
Not the back. You go get first class
We did that one
spirit, be
time,
lit.
that was not fun.
Spirit.
Nah. But we had did Delta. Delta's fire. Bro.
Delta's good. Delta's
Delta's
good.
fire.
It's cheap. I mean,
8 hours driving. I was just soon as I saw that, I was just like, that's gonna be easy flying.
Yeah, but shit, 8 hours drive. That's a minute, bro. Like, god
That's a
damn.
work shift. Ain't that bad?
It's not. She's right though.
That's one way, people.
You know
Yeah,
what? If you
work
got two
shift
more
though.
than one driver, then it's
But you gotta go. You gotta go for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, ain't nobody going the same day.
No hell no. What?
What?
As soon as you get there, you gotta reverse.
Yeah, you go there, be like, all right, we leaving at 10.
No,
we
you
get
gotta
there
go
at
for
6
like-
p.m.
It's
You
not
gotta
that
go
bad.
for
It's
like
not
4
that bad if
days
you got
or
more than
so.
one driver. If you got 3 drivers, then you
Sit
just
there, have a
switch it up.
conversation with Kitty for an hour and go back
Just
home.
go back. Yeah.
That's crazy.
8 more hours, get back home.
You gotta get back
2
on
in
this
the morning.
highway.
Chat talking.
Oh no.
Yeah, we could make it happen though.
Oh nah, I gotta pick y'all up.
Oh,
Yeah.
he said BT Gamer said I plan on attending New York City Comic Con. Yeah, I want to
No.
do that.
Yeah.
I didn't do
Okay.
that this year.
We'll be there with you probably.
And she said she's in Cleveland, Ohio too. Okay.
Okay.
So
In the city.
Let's put Cleveland. Cleveland. Alrighty. Okay, a little bit less time.
That's hourless.
Okay, like 30 minutes off that.
Right.
That's
30
even
minutes
better.
up. Then by plane, same thing.
We
Same
gotta
thing.
do
It's,
Comic Con this year.
'Cause it's just to the airport.
Right. Okay. Alright. So let's see Retro's Norway. No, Norway ain't far either. Let's just check.
that's a journey.
Let's
Which Comic
just
Con is he coming from? Brooklyn or the one in Manhattan?
I
New
guess
York,
the big
the
one.
Manhattan
New
one,
York, the big one, yeah.
the Javits Center
The
one.
one in New York is fun. So you remember Akichi
Oh.
and the Black Power
Yeah.
Rangers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's always there. Zach's always
Yeah,
there.
Zach always there.
I was saying, oh shit,
God damn.
7 to 8 hours.
7 to 8 hours flying.
Damn, dog.
Wow.
So
Damn,
and the
dog.
equivalence of going to Ohio driving is going to Norway flying.
That's crazy.
God damn.
Woo.
That's a long time.
He in a whole nother fucking climate zone over
You
there.
probably
Right.
have to get on the plane, get off
We got to get on the plane late night, like 12.
But you may have to get 2 planes though.
You might have to get 2 planes.
Yeah.
You got to get a layover. Layover's going to be way more than 8 hours.
Yes.
Yeah,
More than 8
that's
hours?
probably why it's 8 hours.
It's just
You
8
gotta do
hours in the
layovers.
air.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
right, but you gotta do layovers. You gotta put 12 hours maybe time.
Damn.
Madness.
That's
Oh,
tiring.
no.
So when you get off the plane, that day is shot.
Yeah, it's done.
That day is
Your
done.
Day is just,
By the time you get to the hotel or where you staying, you unpack, you
yeah.
eat and sleep.
You
That's
gotta be
it.
there for some time.
Look how
Yeah.
many miles it is, though. 3,686.7
'Cause
miles.
if you go for 5 days, you only get
God
3.
You're
damn.
right.
You
So
really
gotta
only get
go
3.
For a week and a half.
You gotta go for like at least 7.
God damn.
Then you get about 5 of chilling.
Man, that's a lot. That's a lot.
And all right, so if we was to go, DJ Spin Dash,
DJ
yeah.
Spin Nash.
Drop a bomb for my guy Spin Dash. If we were to go to where Diggs is at, Diggs, which state you in, Diggs? What state you in? Tell us what state you in. Yeah, put your state up there. Everybody in the chat, put your state up there. We're gonna see how far it is from New York to your state.
First of all, Ohio's the closest so far.
Right. Ohio's the closest in in flying.
Yeah,
It ain't the
yeah,
closest
hey,
in driving.
No.
Just got off work, so I gotta pull up. Appreciate you,
Ah,
bro.
we appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you, bro.
Dig said only 4 hours to Mass.
So, Massachusetts.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's not.
Massachusetts.
That's right. That's driving.
Nah, that's driving.
That's
for
driving.
that's right there. That's right there. Yeah, Diggs is that close.
That you could do it. You could do 3 days for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drive there 4 hours, travel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
'Cause that same day you could chill.
Yeah.
You could drive for 4 hours, park,
Yeah,
chill,
early
go
in
out
the
to
morning.
eat. You know what I'm saying? Exactly.
That's right there. That's right there.
If you leave 6 in the morning, you're getting there before midday.
Yeah.
You can take a nap. and
You can
still
take a
wake
nap
up.
and still got.
we've
We're going out
done,
that night.
Yeah,
We're
right.
going out that night.
Yeah, we've done trips to Atlantic City, and Atlantic City is like 2.5 hours. That's
Right,
cool.
yeah.
That's cool. And we've driven upstate, like Albany and whatnot too. That's
Yeah, I made it to Pennsylvania and
Yeah.
shit like that. Well, I did Georgia one time.
Ooh,
Yeah,
like 6
not
hours.
doing that again.
Nah, that's like
16 hours, right?
16,
Well, that's-
12, 16 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, what? 12
Yeah.
is
12 to 16
Whoa.
hours,
12
depending
is
on how
not even
fast.
12. Not even 12.
Depending on how fast you drive. Because if you take no
12.
bathroom breaks, it's a straight run.
12? You're looking
You
at
like
least
the job?
14-ish.
14,
You like
16
it?
hours. Let's see, Georgia. Geo.
Nah.
He's over it.
From Georgia,
He was over it.
see,
Well,
look,
then we got mad
13.
shit in the
Look.
car.
almost 14. But if you
That's what I'm saying. I said
if you
at
take
least,
no
I
breaks,
said at least 13.
if you take no breaks,
That's a long drive.
That's
that's
a
a,
long
that's a
drive.
solid 12.
Long
To
drive.
be in the car, he over it.
Yo, bro, we was cooped up.
Mm.
Oh, nah, I'm not doing it again.
I'm
I'm not at 40. I need bathroom breaks.
Yeah,
I need
food.
stretch breaks.
Right.
I need back stretch breaks. I can't do it. I need food.
Yeah.
BT Gamer said Arizona. Let's put Arizona. Goddamn, Arizona is mad. That's a hot ass state.
Yeah, that's a hot ass state.
That's hot. Arizona. God damn.
35 hours?
Damn.
That's 2 days.
We ain't driving to see
Nah.
you, BT Gamer.
What is it flying?
If we fly by plane, 4.5 to 6
That's still
hours.
mad,
Yeah.
bro.
That's less than Norway, though.
You gotta have one of
That's
those
less than
planes with the
Norway.
That's
bed.
less than Norway.
It's about 4 hours to Jamaica.
You gotta be in first class or something.
Ooh.
You're gonna have to be comfortable.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to be
You
comfortable.
can't get no cheap shit.
You gotta get comfortable.
It's like here to South Africa. That's far.
But goddamn, almost 36 hours driving this shit crazy.
You don't drive that, man.
Nah.
Who
Every
driving
time
that
you gotta fill
far?
up your fucking tank.
Nah.
And what car making it?
Brooklyn
My shit
Berry.
don't-
Marie, drop a bomb for her. Welcome in,
She's
welcome
in
in.
Cali.
She in
Not
Cali.
that far.
Okay, no, Cali is mad
Cali's
far.
far.
It's all on the other side of the
That's
world.
other side.
The other side of the map. Cali? Ooh, that's like 40 hours.
No, it's not.
Nah, it's not far.
Oh, shit. I thought you was joking.
I was dead ass serious.
43
I was
hours.
dead ass serious.
What is it flying?
43 hours. And then by plane, 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
Direct
For
flight.
a direct
A
flight,
straight
you
run?
said. Oh, straight flight.
5 to 6 hours.
For that, that's straight.
That's a straight
Can't
flight.
sit on
You in the
plane.
air
Like
for
if you
at
do,
least 5.
if you do
That's
JetBlue
crazy.
or
You gotta do
Delta,
first class. Or the
It's
one,
5.
or the
5 to
plane,
6 flights.
You gotta do the plane with
5
the
to 6
beds.
hours.
You gotta do the plane with the bed and shit. You can lay down.
But if you get a layover, that shit gonna be like 10 hours.
10 hours. You
8
gotta
to
get
10.
off, reload, get back on.
I don't like layovers,
Jesus.
like,
I don't.
Hell
You gotta get
no.
your luggage now. That's
I want to get where I'm
$2.
going right now.
Hell no. This shit crazy.
She said, "Look, it ain't that bad."
It ain't that
terrible.
bad. That's
Easy
horrible.
money.
That's almost Norway.
That's mad
43
far,
hours,
son.
Jesus Christ.
43 hours and 4 minutes.
Let me see who else
And
we got
4
up here.
minutes is
Right,
crazy.
right. What the
Who
fuck
else
is
we
all
got
this?
up here in the chat? Oh, Sao Paulo. Oh,
Who y'all-
Valdoni's in Sao Paulo.
That's Brazil.
Anybody
I'm putting
watching
Sao
this?
Paulo specifically.
Popped up.
Thank
Damn.
God damn.
Driving is only
But-
10 hours.
That ain't driving. That's
Oh,
flying.
That gotta be. That's Brazil. There ain't no driving.
Ain't no driving. What kind
Oh,
of
shit,
aircraft,
right.
watercraft
Yeah,
we got driving?
Right, that's what I even think
She
about
got the
that.
shit inside it. It touched water,
So,
turned to a boat.
yeah, some GTA shit. As soon as you go off the cliff and shit,
She go in the air, turn to a fucking airplane
spy,
and
it's
shit.
spy hunter ass
Crazy.
shit.
10 hours on a
007
plane.
vehicles.
Nah, yeah.
10 hours on a plane is crazy.
9.5.
I'll be
Then,
sick.
Baldoni, we are not coming to see you unless we coming out there to stay a couple of
At
weeks.
least, yeah, at least a
Months.
week.
Like a
Fucking
week,
month.
bro.
I got
a month to feel it.
Facts.
God damn. All y'all van take turns driving too. Oh,
Baldoni said that would be a crazy drive.
that's a wild drive.
Bananas.
Yeah, we can drive to Don Abbey.
Yeah, we can drive it down there.
He's in Canada.
He's in Canada. Don Abbey, which
How far is the drive though?
which Canada? Which part of Canada? Ontario.
Put Canada. Let me just see how.
Let's see. I mean, Canada is not easy.
It's not that far. It's not as far as you think.
No,
That's
it's
right
like,
outside of
It's like
Buffalo.
5 hours.
You know that, right? It's right
2
outside of
hours.
Buffalo.
No, 7 to 8 by car, 2 hours by flight. That ain't shit.
7. That's a whole other country.
Yeah.
2 hours by flight ain't nothing.
The tip of like right by Buffalo.
Yeah.
It's like that's literally Canada.
Right there.
So look,
Buffalo, Canada is like it's like
So-
that's where the border is.
yeah,
Right
that's
there.
pretty much where
Right.
Niagara Falls and whatnot is at.
Right.
So here's the funny part: 7-8 hours driving to get to Canada for Don Abbey is the same equivalence of driving to go to Kitty
In the same fucking country.
in Ohio.
That's
This
crazy.
is crazy. 2-hour flight from New York, Niagara Falls,
It's probably so
Ontario.
different looking and everything out there.
Oh, it's probably beautiful out
Yeah,
there.
I like this.
It ain't all top,
I do wanna-
high
I
ass
do wanna see
buildings and
Canada.
shit.
Yeah, me too.
wanna
Yeah.
see. My dad's out there.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Who else we got there? Y'all won't make it through Mexico. No, we won't make
Nah,
it.
nope.
We won't make it.
It's
Kitty.
over for us.
It's over for that boy. We won't make it. Let me just type in Brazil, because Cam's in Brazil, and if we were to go to Brazil,
It's the same thing as Sao Paulo.
Sao Paulo,
That's in Brazil.
yeah,
Same shit.
8 to 10 hours, yeah.
But Brazil is bigger than I thought though.
Rio de Janeiro,
Brazil is big.
damn.
I know it's different out there.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at what it looked like.
But see, Japan is so funny. My daughter wanted to go there so bad.
Real quick, let me just see what Sao Paulo look like.
Oh.
Oh, Sao Paulo looking nice.
Well, Baldoni lives in a city,
Sao
and it's
Paulo.
a pretty. I think he said it's one of the biggest cities, not just in Brazil, just overall. It's a pretty. It's huge.
Yeah, Sao Paulo
That ain't
looking
no
nice.
like.
This right here is fire.
Nah, that's beautiful shit.
This right here is cool too. Yeah.
Look at that.
this
Look at
guy.
that highway system.
Ooh-wee. Yeah,
That looks
Sao
pretty
Paulo,
modern.
Yeah. It'd be nice to go out there, but
Nah, that looks.
we ain't
nice.
going for a day, bro.
Nah,
We gotta stay a week.
Nah, we gotta stay for a hot minute.
We gotta go for at least a week. It's the most populated city outside of Asia. Oh,
That's pretty big.
Right.
okay. Southeast Brazil. South Brazil would be even further. Damn. That's where Sao Paulo.
GK,
was at.
what did you say about GK? GK gonna find his wife, his Brazilian wife.
Yeah. Come back with a
Hey.
real BBL.
Yeah.
She gonna come back with the real BBL. Like, this is homegrown.
Well posted, you know what I mean?
This is homegrown right here, man. I don't know what you're talking about. That's what we got. Gluttony over in the UK.
Yep, this is UK.
Let's put the UK real quick.
UK, I don't think it's that far.
Let's put the not for New York because we right there on the edge anyway. UK.
That's quite a little bit.
7 to 8 hours.
Yeah, it's quite a little further.
So
away.
the equivalence to going to UK is
Which
the
is a
same
whole nother
equivalence to
continent.
going to
Kitty. In
Kitty
Ohio.
driving, but same equivalence to going to go see Retro in Norway.
Yeah.
So we can't go see Retro. We can't go see Gluttony ass over there either.
Hey, Gluttony coming here. We'll make it happen.
Yeah,
Meet me halfway.
if we
you know
go
what I
see
mean?
if we go see Gluttony, we gotta chill with it.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Gotta be a week.
I'm gonna be on all his streams. Just what's up?
Yeah.
Is GK still there? Yep.
Yeah, I am. Got a bowl of cereal on the couch.
Yep. What you doing? Chilling with that? Yeah.
This man. Brooklyn Marie said 43 hours. It'll take me an hour and 40. We going to Disneyland. That would be a
That
dope
would be
trip.
lit. That would be a dope trip.
But wait, you, Brooklyn Marie, you need to come on this side because you from Brooklyn.
Right.
Come on back home. Come on back home and
You
we
come
get
sit
you
on the
right here
couch.
on the game lounge right here and get you right. We ain't gotta come all the way over there to the
Then
west
Then we
side.
gonna have the game, the red couch.
The red couch. You can't bring the red couch 43
Nah, that ain't
hours.
gonna happen. That
It's
ain't-
not going.
That's not gonna.
No, I'm actually not dweebs. Damn.
Damn.
Man.
Well, we gotta be dweebs though.
Damn, why we gotta be dweebs?
I'm cool.
I can sit at people's table.
Her name is Brooklyn. Her first
Facts.
name is Brooklyn. Her name is Brooklyn. A little people.
The first name, Brooklyn?
Yeah, people name me Brooklyn.
Is,
People name me
is that what
Jersey.
it is?
Yeah, that's what she said. Her
Whose name is Brooklyn?
Brooklyn Marie.
That's not her name. Her name is Marie.
She said, look, Kitty said her name is Brooklyn.
Can't really be Brooklyn. Her name is Marie.
So her last
But
name's
Marie's
Marie?
from Brooklyn.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I
No,
thought
she
she was.
said, here we go. See, her name is Brooklyn. Y'all.
I
No,
thought.
it's Mary.
No, I thought it was
That could
Marie.
be her middle name.
I thought it was Marie.
Her name could be Brooklyn Marie or Mary. Hello.
It's Marie.
It's Mary.
It's Marie. You keep doing this. We already had this established before. You keep saying Mary.
Brooklyn Mary.
She has no lamps. Like
I said, I told y'all they dweeb. See, her first name is Brooklyn.
Mary.
Oh my God. Brooklyn.
Her name is
maybe
not actually
middle name
Brooklyn.
is
Right, it's her first name. Just like Jersey is her first name.
Brooklyn.
Sure.
Yes.
Brooklyn can be a first. It can be,
Brooklyn
but
her
is
first
it?
Name. It is a name.
That's what she said.
No, her
Yes,
name is
she
Mary.
said it.
Who said it?
Kitty said it.
Kitty said it. Not
But then
Brooklyn.
she said that's why she call y'all dweebs.
What?
It's interesting. I'm interested. No.
What?
Fuck this.
It's
I'm interested
Mary.
to
It's
know.
Mary. Her name is Mary.
She said y'all
Marie.
go to bed. She said y'all go to bed. See?
Your name is Mary, right?
It's Marie.
And y'all.
We had this
And
conversation.
you.
Oh my.
And you're from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn is. See, look. Now they said, wait, Brooklyn is named. Yeah, Brooklyn is named.
It can be.
It could be named.
It
but
can
Her
be.
name
it's
is Brooklyn.
But I thought her name was Mary, and she's from Brooklyn.
No.
no.
So Mary's not from Brooklyn.
Yeah, it is that. It is.
See,
That's
so
what I
why-
thought
she
that
said,
was.
why did you say Mary? It was Marie.
Well, who said that?
Don Abby and Kitty.
It's Mary.
Marie.
She said BK Marie fight. He said I'm about to. See, she about to storm on me.
So all right. So
On
she-
him. He's saying it wrong. I'm
so
saying it right.
her name is Brooklyn,
Yes.
but she's not from Brooklyn.
Right, her name is Brooklyn.
Wait
It
a
is
minute.
Marie. Look, Marie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Not Mary.
Brooklyn Mary.
No, not
Marie.
Mary.
Exactly. That's what I said.
No,
Shut up.
God damn it. God damn it.
Uh,
Somebody help him.
Brooklyn
Somebody help
Mary.
him.
All right. So you're not from Brooklyn.
No. I
So
guess
who's Mary?
Her name.
Her.
Your name is Brooklyn and Mary?
Her
I'm still
middle
confused.
name.
I'm
we don't
confused
know
too,
the
Her
because-
middle name is Mary? Where Mary come from? Why do we add Mary? What's going on here?
Look, I'm confused now.
What's the
too.
science here?
I need, I need a,
Who's confused? Me, CJ, the queen, the audience?
I need an adult.
No, it's confusing.
I need an adult.
All right, so
Her
hold
name's
on.
Mary.
It's Mary.
What?
But what was he? The thing is, he's asking the Brooklyn part of it.
What is your name?
It's
All right, so it's Mary.
Mary. She may have lived in Brooklyn or was born in Brooklyn,
Why I keep-
but moved to Cali and been in Cali.
Or she could just be from town.
Okay, wait, hold the fuck up.
Oh, you'll never know.
Oh.
This is what I'm saying. Your name is Brooklyn Mary,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not from Brooklyn. So your name really is
She
Brooklyn,
said next subject, y'all don't see.
right?
Marie.
So-
T.Y. said Marie.
Mary.
Mary.
So I don't even know what to ask anymore.
It's not Mary. It's Marie. Keep establishing this with you.
It's Marie.
That's what I said.
Brooklyn
Marie.
Marie.
Say Marie.
Mary. That's what I said.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So Brooklyn Mary. All right. What I want to.
The Brooklyn part. You want to get the Brooklyn part?
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what the Brooklyn part is then? She said, you'll never know.
Y'all can be whatever y'all want me to be. Don't go saying stuff like that.
Uh-oh.
It's about to be an X-rated part of the show.
Yeah,
Don't
Here
be
we
done.
go with the bullshit.
There you go. Okay, so here's a disclaimer.
I'm just saying.
You just saying you about to be free.
Yeah, for the next, I had wrote it down.
He wrote something down.
I had wrote down that the viewer discretion is advised.
We even said we
I don't even know where the phone is at.
Viewer
He's
discretion is. I'm just saying.
oh, okay. So I'm not gonna say it yet. No. Anywho, Big Brooklyn,
Big Brooklyn. Yes, Big Brooklyn. My guy.
Big Brooklyn. Are you in Brooklyn?
Oh my God. Shut up.
I want to know.
I happen to know he's from Brooklyn.
Is he in Brooklyn?
Not right now, but he's from Brooklyn.
He's from Brooklyn.
He's an East Flatbush head.
He's Flatbush.
He's an East Flatbush
My
head.
man. Double bomb for Big Brooklyn. He's Flatbush. Yes.
See how easy that is to figure out?
Yeah,
Mary?
that was easy. That was easy.
See how easy that is?
All
I still don't know where she's from.
Are you in Brooklyn, Big Brooklyn?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
He's still in New York, though.
Still in New York.
I'm not going to put his business out there unless he wants to tell
Okay.
Me.
He upstate somewhere. That's good.
you. He's right. In the BX.
I live in the BX.
There you go.
All right, my man. Who's the one with the baby on the way? You.
And Mr. Party Boy.
Right
Yes.
here. These two right here.
I got the
They got
baby.
a baby on the
Look,
way.
see?
Baby CJ
coming.
the DJ.
Yep.
Cozavius.
Cozavius is his middle name.
He said been in the BX for like 7 years.
Okay, so you still a Brooklyn native.
She said exactly. That's the X-rated. She said, "Oh, y'all nasty." That's what she said.
Been to Flatbush my whole life. Q and B line Parkside. I ain't Caton. Oh, okay. I know exactly where you was at. But now you up there in the BX. They say the craziest people come from the Bronx and all of Florida, so you up there with all the crazy people, bro. Careful up there.
BT Gamer said something.
I asked a question. What question was that?
Where's the question at?
Where is the rest of the crew tonight? Oh, they got their own things they got going on. BT Gamer.
You know, YN number one is YNing.
Yep.
And Ash Ketchum is catching.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
He's trying to be the best Pokemon master he could be.
Of them all.
Right.
So, at the end portion of the show, since the audience have any questions? Audience, it's the last
So-
show of the year.
Last show of the year, everyone. Last show. If you have a question for us, because we
Yeah.
obviously got the drill job and figured out what other states you guys live in and how far it is from here in New York City to y'all state. Y'all got any question for us? Questions that is piquing y'all interest?
Anything.
Almost anything.
Almost anything.
Yeah. Almost anything.
Go ahead.
Please put it in the chat. We can read it out, say what it is.
How was y'all? Mine was good. Low key, stayed home, ate some food, got a little tipsy, regular shit.
Right. How was y'all Christmas? Yep, cool.
Why is CJ the DJ so cool? You gotta answer that
Yeah,
question.
yes.
DJ Spin Dash said,
why is CJ so cool? Well, you know me, man. You know how I get it up. You know what I'm saying? Spin Dash. You know how we do, bruh. You know how we do.
Xbox or
I do my
PlayStation?
best, man.
Xbox. Xbox. Xbox.
Xbox or PlayStation
Brooklyn
for me.
Mary and Big Brooklyn.
Marie said, did
Why?
y'all get what y'all
Explain.
want?
Xbox.
Yes.
Explain why you pick Xbox or PlayStation.
No.
Xbox.
We
Yeah,
on we on PS5 all day.
That's
We
cool.
on PlayStation.
I got both, but if you
I-
want to know which one I'm a like a
A bigger
fanboy
fan
of,
of?
if you wanna,
Yeah.
You know.
You're an Xbox guy.
yeah.
I respect it.
Yeah.
Kitty said we
I
playing
tried
right,
that.
Kitty.
I tried that.
At the end of the day, I call myself just a gamer. Wherever the good game is at,
Right, but I tried that. I've been a Sony head forever. Then
Yeah.
I was like, all right, we going to P4, and then Xbox One came out, and Killer Instinct was coming out for Xbox One only.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, y'all ain't gonna do that shit and had me out the loop, so I went over there.
Then he became out the loop.
And then I became out the loop with everybody else on every other game, because
You
Street Fighter
should- you
only
should-
came out for
You should
P4.
have crossed over. If you wanted to do that crossover,
Mhm.
it would have been better if you went from PS3 to 360. 'Cause that's when Xbox
Yeah.
was the juggernaut.
Yeah, it was.
That's when the ecosystem for somebody who was
I had
jumping
I had a
over.
360 too.
But that's where it was at.
I had both. I had both
Because
P3 and 360,
for-
but
for
I played
Sony,
more
The
360.
PS2 is the king.
Yeah.
For Xbox, the 360 is their king.
Yes.
You
Yes.
get what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's their.
That's
creme
the
de la creme.
the
Yes.
top tier pinnacle.
The Xbox One
Yes.
actually fell off the pedestal
Yeah.
for what we came off of
Oh, that's
360.
a good,
Right.
That's a good. He said I had both as well. Sony got better solo games, but Xbox had better.
Multiplayer.
That's always been the thing, though. That's
Yeah,
nothing new.
It's nothing new.
That's nothing new. So Sony always have better single player IPs. The God of Wars,
Yes.
the Horizon. It's just there. The Spider Mans.
Baldoni,
We can list them all day. You know what I mean?
Baldoni says PlayStation. PlayStation.
PlayStation is like after too many restrictions.
Yep. Big Brooklyn said.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
It is. It is. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying about that? It's too many restrictions, but it kind of prevents people from fucking up their shit too.
That's the same thing. That's what all people who love iPhones say.
Right.
People who love Samsung say. That's
Because
I don't want you to worry about that for me.
It's very linear and streamlined.
Mhm.
Everything is all cohesive in their ecosystem, and that's it.
Yeah,
And that's why I say for people, because I have a PS Portal, and there's other people be like, nah, you should have got a Steam Deck. I'm like, I could have. With my tech knowledge, I definitely could have had a Steam Deck, but I just don't feel like doing that sometimes. I don't feel like going the extra mile and doing a bunch of crazy shit just to make
it's
the
PlayStation to PlayStation. That's
right with with the Portal. I just turn the shit on and connect the internet, playing my people out.
That's what I said. PlayStation to
Done.
PlayStation. So it's nothing
Easy.
to really like.
I ain't stressed about it.
You know what I mean?
So real quick, let me just go down the thing. I got both too. I love Xbox. This is Brooklyn Marie, not Mary.
Brooklyn Mary. Thank you.
Okay.
Who got Switch 2 so we can get on that?
I have
Mine-
both
we
as
have
well.
it. Mine's
Sonny
not
got better. Sony got better.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Who got Switch 2 so we can get on that Mario Kart?
My daughter got it.
So we
Wait,
just
that-
got it for the kids. No, our big girl, she'll be 13 in a couple weeks.
No, wow. Okay.
Next week,
Next no,
the 11th of the 9th.
the 9th. So 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
13 on
Oh,
the
you
9th.
getting a teenager.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
She got.
So let's clap that.
Yeah.
So we got it. We got the 13. We got the Switch 2 for our 13-year-old, soon to be 13-year-old, and she loves it. And we played it. We all four of us was in the living room
That's
playing
right.
it, and it got crazy. They got the new feature called Knockout Tour.
Mhm.
When you're playing,
But it's still not
if you don't get to a certain part of the round the map before you get through, if you, like let's say you're in
Cut you out.
17th place and only 16 places can go
You get
through,
dropped
you
off.
drop
at the
off.
end, yeah.
Right.
The last person always gets dropped off.
Yeah.
If you
It's
didn't
not.
make it.
It's not 8 out of
Flying
10.
Base in the building. What's up,
Ain't no
Flying?
game.
Happy New Year.
Fly, appreciate. They wallet.
Kirby,
They
$80.
wallet. They're wallet.
Let's
They're
go
bugging.
buy.
They're bugging.
Baldoni said, I hate Microsoft, so I have to go to PlayStation. I get you.
I get that.
I'm with that. I have all 4 PS, Xbox, Switch, and PC. Okay. Kitty's a major gamer. I mean, it's only right.
For me, the PC works better because it's everything in
It's
one.
everything
Again, we
online.
said that at the beginning of the show. I mean, it wasn't. It probably wasn't in here.
Right.
Just to be healthy, be here.
And
make
Big
money.
Brooker said, and I love multiplayer games, so that's why I'm on Xbox. BT Gamer said, do you guys have New Year's resolutions? So, yeah, pretty much. We just want to make sure, we have, good health, good
Keep
wealth.
everything going
Keep
up.
everything,
Whatever is positive, keep it going up. All
Right.
the negative, shove it down.
Oh, right.
Stick to plan.
Whatever
As well-
it is,
as well,
positive
as well
go
as
up.
the baby popping out. So when the baby comes, we're gonna be happy about that. So great. My resolution is no solutions. What the man
And no plan
Marie
B's.
says.
Plan A's only.
Plan
That's it.
A's.
Plan ain't only.
Plan A's. I like that. Big Brother said, funny thing, PlayStation been hacked like 2-3 times. Xbox never been hacked to my
Oh
knowledge.
wow.
When you say hacked, like the console
Nah,
had
they've been
like
hacked.
modding,
I
or
remember-
do you mean like the
No.
Xbox?
I remember at
Uh,
least one time it was out in news
Mhm.
that PlayStation was hacked, and it was something with a shut. It did happen at least once to my knowledge.
Yeah, it did.
It did happen at least once to my knowledge.
Yeah, she got a PC,
I mean-
a Steam Deck, a Switch, all Xbox, all PS, Atari, Nintendo, Super
Who
Nintendo,
saying
Super
all
Game
that?
Boy,
Damn,
Brooklyn
Brooklyn
Marie.
Marie
Brooklyn
says she
Mary?
got
You got all the games.
I mean, I got them shits in my closet too, but no, but not 64 anymore.
Yeah,
I have
64 is a
regular
good one.
Nintendo, not Super Nintendo anymore. I was going to get an SNES Classic and put that in the closet.
That'll be fire.
I'm going to get that soon. Game Boy we do have. Xboxes we do have. I had the Fat Boy, the old head.
Oh, the big
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I forget what they call it. The original
The
official
OG
tissue
Xbox.
one,
The
the
OG
OG.
Xbox.
Ataris, I don't have it. I had an Atari, but I broke it, so I can throw it away. And then Steam Deck I don't have, and Switches we do have. So yeah, we in the same
Yeah,
ballpark.
she's stocked
I got a
up.
couple other things. I got
She's stocked
Sega
up.
stuff too. I got GameCube still.
Hmm.
My Dreamcast.
I
At my
got a
pop's
Dreamcast
house.
around here somewhere.
Yeah, Big Brooklyn said Atari was my first console.
I still
Wow.
have my Game Gear, believe it or not.
Damn, it still works.
Yeah,
Yeah, it works. I was
it
on
got
the link for
it got Sonic and Terminator in it,
Yeah,
right?
it's Terminator. I got.
And they work.
Yeah, they come on.
Oh, that's fire.
Yeah.
You can play it.
Yeah, I can play. Do you know what's crazy? The battery part. You know the spring part.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's messed
broken.
up, so I got to fold a piece of
Aluminum,
Before they
yeah.
get that connection going.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how old it is.
It's in
It's
the,
the
house.
regular
So-
gray one.
No, the
black
black
one.
one.
The
The
black
black
one.
Game
Yeah.
Gear.
Okay, the game.
The
I'm
big
thinking about
ass
the
shit.
game.
I got that too, Game Boy, the gray one.
Game Gear was fire though.
Speaking of Game Boy, we had got a Lego set for our big girl. So I'm gonna do like how you do
Do,
what
do a build.
I'm gonna
Nice.
do a build.
Nice.
She's
Yes,
excited
yes,
about
she's too excited, too excited.
Nice.
So soon coming on my channel, guys, which is obviously
Put it
twitch.tv.
in there, put it in
CJ
there.
the DJ. I'm gonna
Mhm.
make sure I put it there. We're gonna do a build like how GK and
Foes
Poser.
Yep. Mhm.
how GK and Koza does as well. We're gonna do a Game Boy build. It's gonna be a brand new Lego build of a Game Boy.
That's cool.
TV slash. I spelled that wrong. Cool. Yep. Got it. Okay, so that's
There I go. Y'all follow along if you're not already.
Yep, that's the channel there. For sure. I'm gonna pin it.
So
You
you
too.
say you
Enjoy
go
your night, BT
So-
Game. I'll see you next week.
later,
Yep.
Brody. Thanks for popping in.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So you're gonna be doing that with Little Mamas.
Yep.
The
Okay.
big one.
We're gonna do the big one.
The
The big
big.
one.
Okay.
The big one. It's
girl.
hers. Yeah. It's
Okay.
hers.
Okay.
She
Starting
wa-
when we can be expecting this?
Try to do it this week before they go back to school.
So what? Maybe Monday, Tuesday.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Before they go back to school. So make sure you guys pop in.
And just to let you guys know, me and Gluttony and the community, we was talking about doing like before the New Year,
Yeah.
do like a movie night that consists of 4 streamers of us.
Okay.
So we'll all be streaming and watching the same movie and in
Okay.
the same Discord chatting.
Okay.
So you guys look out for that, just like a yearly 1 year celebration. The year's over, we're gonna keep moving. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, retro.
Retro said, hold on. Retro said, let me tell y'all what I'm grateful this year. Meeting the whole crew here. That's the biggest.
I
Appreciate
drop
y'all.
a bomb for that.
You're a great addition to the family.
Appreciate
And keep up with the good music.
Yo,
Yes,
dog,
yes,
don't
please.
stop.
Yeah,
Don't
please,
stop.
please.
I'll say at the game lounge, we love your shit,
Yeah.
dog. We love your shit, dog.
I wish I could like spin it at some parties that I play, but I know they not into that kind of music.
Right.
And they
Right.
can't dance to
Because
it.
they can't
to it,
dance to it. A lot of parties I'm doing is either two-stepping or they
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
crazy
yeah.
doing their thing.
West
West
Indian,
Indian
right.
parties or
They're trying to hear some Sanchez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even some of the like the YN parties, they want to hear all the new YN
All the new
shit.
YN shit, yeah.
Right, the Cash Cobains and whatnot.
Well,
Yeah.
Retro, we appreciate you for
We
being
got
a part of the
Ellie
family,
Choppers.
man. Sticking around, man. Shout out to you, brother.
Yes. I've been having since 1645. Hey,
Who said that?
Brooklyn Marie says she had it since 1645. Damn. Talking about the stuff that she got.
Mm.
It's a long time. It's a long, long time. Yeah, that's pretty much everybody that's in chat that said that. So yeah.
So we caught up?
Yep, so we all caught up. We all
All right.
caught up. So yeah. So what is our takeaway for this year at the Game Lounge friends, family?
What is our takeaway?
What is our
We'll
takeaway?
keep this channel going.
We're gonna keep this thing
Big
growing
things
with
in the
us and the
future.
family. We know we all met at different timelines of the Game Lounge lifespan, and as you know, as a group, we
Right.
all came together. We all saw the potential, and we still going.
Yes.
And we all see the result.
Yes.
So when you first came on the show, did we even hit 100 yet?
No.
No.
And now we filed 55.
Yes. Yes. Definitely
You
clap
know
up
what
for
I'm saying? We
555.
filed 55. We're looking 600 right in the face.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We just did a big 1 year anniversary, celebration. And shout out to all the people that keep showing up every week, man. This is our last show of the year. 2025
Yes.
is on the way
Appreciate y'all
out.
for
So we
tuning
gotta
in.
let y'all know we appreciate y'all too.
Yes.
Because
we do.
we can plan all the shit we want to plan. If y'all don't show up,
What's the point?
what's the
Yeah.
point? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So thanks to y'all
Appreciate
for
y'all.
showing up every week and
Every
making this a
Sunday,
special
taking
okay.
time
I
out
look
your
forward
busy
to this. You know what I'm
lives.
saying?
Yeah, me too.
And shout out to, because we also put on a show that gives other people their platform to come and perform
Right.
and get interviews. You
themselves.
talk about their brand. You promote yourself. It's not about us. The Game Lounge ain't about us. It's about y'all, everybody who want to come up.
Right.
Whatever it is that you're doing, as long as it's positive, we'll
Yes, sir.
house it right here
Yes,
at the
indeed.
Game Lounge from all over the world.
There's a
And we
couple
appreciate
things that
and
we got
love y'all.
coming. A couple things we got coming up. Of course, we have
interviews.
new interviews for the January. We got
Yes.
our guy
We got Moon.
Michael Moon. I was
We
gonna
got
say City.
Moon. We got
Michael
another
Moon's
female
coming,
coming up for an interview.
Right.
And we got my man Ty, who played his music.
Yeah, we
We
played
got him
Ty
coming. So
stuff.
we got 3 January. We're starting the year off with a bang.
Right. We also gonna have a white boy versus.
That's coming. That's still coming.
We had the white question. The question of
yep.
what white songs.
Yep.
Get the hood sort of.
Oh, we got our
hood
contestants.
pass.
Our contestants are
We
loaded
got-
and ready. So
Right. We're gonna
we've
have a
been
white
cooking.
boy versus.
We
We're
also
gonna have
got the show.
the-
Collective.
Collectibles Part 3.
Part
I can't
3.
wait for it.
So those of you who were not here for Collectibles Part 1 and 2, Collectibles Part 1 we was pretty much in house, and for Collectibles Part 2 we had you guys send us some of your collectibles. So this time for Collectibles Part 3 we're gonna do the same thing, but we also are gonna try to get probably go to someone else's thing and see if they got like a bigger shrine of things.
Mhm.
So for Collectibles Part 3, make sure you guys get all your collectibles together, do a full video, or if you just want to do a video, no words,
Pictures or whatever.
whatever.
Send it in to us and we'll
Send
put
it
it
in
on the
to
show.
us. Make sure you
Yeah.
put your name
And
on
this
it so
time,
we could.
I kind of want to maybe have like a contest.
Yes.
We do a vote.
Yeah, we'll
See
do
who
a
had
voting
the best,
poll.
the best collection or whatever the case
Right.
may be.
We'll do a voting poll.
And your
what
collection
thing
could
we
be
think
whatever
is the
you
best
want.
one.
It
Right.
could be your toys, whatever you collect. Doesn't
Whatever
matter.
you
It
Right.
really doesn't matter what the fuck it is. Just send it in and we're gonna do a big showcase here.
Right.
Bigfoot said, "Fly me out for VIP." I told you, we waiting to get you on first class.
Right.
We're waiting to get you
And
on first
where's
class.
Bigfoot at? Because we want to know how
We're
far
waiting
New
to
York
get you on
is.
first class.
Bigfoot, where you at? What state you in? So we can see how far your state is from New York City. What state you at? What state you in?
Wow.
Memphis.
Tennessee.
That's Tennessee. Real quick. Let me just see. Memphis. Memphis is 16 hours driving.
Okay, so flying it should be like
Flying.
4 to 5, maybe. What? 16 flying?
damn no.
No, that's driving.
That's right.
Oh, what's the why still say that? Then when you change it wouldn't change.
Yeah, by plane.
Yeah, it's
That's
about
what it say
playing.
about playing. It should still say 16.
Nah, hell no.
That should still say $60,
Hell no.
bro. That's great. No, that's not right.
They
Because it
can't
say
be right.
drive right there. So
Yeah, that's
Right
that's
there.
all.
pick the arrow.
So we looking at
They want us to do math and shit.
yeah, like goddamn.
It gotta be Bigfoot
2
causing
hours.
trouble.
2 hours and 24 minutes. So we looking at
About 3 hours.
about 3 hours.
In total, 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's about the same flight to go to Florida.
right.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Cool.
All right. So before we wrap up, do you guys have any other questions you guys want to ask us?
Yes. Before we wrap up, y'all, if y'all got a question, drop it in the chat before we get up out of here. And
Yes, keep us posted, Bigfoot. He says he's gonna get a ticket, come to New York.
yes,
Keep us posted.
Yes.
But I tell you what, he talking shit. We all know how Bigfoot is. But if you ever actually in New York, Bigfoot,
yeah, for sure. No,
Come on the couch.
all jokes aside.
come on the couch, bro.
Come on,
Come on the couch.
come
But
park
when
right
you
here.
get on the couch, we will tell you that you ain't shit.
Yeah.
Oh, he got to take. All right, Costa, good luck. Fix that problem.
What's
We
supposed to
got a
fix?
water leak at the house.
Oh, shit, nah. Good luck to you, Koza. Get on that.
Yeah, get that together.
Get on
yeah,
that. Get
for
on
sure,
that.
For sure.
Hopefully, that don't get no worse than that.
Yeah. Don't let it ruin nothing.
Nah, go ahead and do that, bro. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Water
No.
leaks are
No,
annoying.
we don't want no.
Oh,
We
my
don't want
God.
no. I remember one time. I don't know if I told you. One time I woke up. Y'all know y'all seen the crib.
Yeah.
Woke up and I stepped off the bed into a pool.
You gotta be a man.
Nah.
First step off the bed.
Shh. Up to your knees?
I kid you not. The first thing I did was this. I didn't move. I didn't say nothing.
Because you aggravated.
Just 1 foot,
And
fresh out my sleep.
whoosh.
I was just like,
How far up the leg was the water?
bro, the water started from the front of the house. You guys remember at the crib where my bedroom is?
Yeah.
The pitch
At the
that-
back
it's
of the
pitch-
house.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what you
pitched
got
down
to
to the.
do.
Oh my
The shit
God.
came
Raining
from
or it
the.
was just
It was
a pipe bust.
what the fuck happened? It was the boiler or some shit.
Oh, see, that's
Oh.
I had to take buckets. I had to call my boss like, yeah, player, this ain't gonna happen. I had to boil all
You
that,
ain't
bro.
gotta get, I know you. Man.
Bro, the
That's why I be
whole
afraid when you
the
got
whole
this shit
of
on the
down
floor
here
like
had
that.
to be mopped up.
Oh my God.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. Yeah, I gotta get Chun-Li off the floor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fast.
because
Gotta get Chun-Li. I've been wilding, keep her on the floor this
don't
It's
long.
been a year.
I've been
procrastinate.
wilding.
Yeah, stop
Stop
procrastinating.
testing the waters, right?
Yeah.
I'm bugging. I'm bugging.
That's scary.
That shit. Hey, you put that up on that thing right there.
Yep, that's
Something.
a squid thing right
Something.
there for now.
That
What?
shit was
You gonna be
wild.
sick. I'm gonna be sick.
Yo, I'm
for
gonna
you.
pass out.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna pass out.
Oh my
I'm gonna pass out.
God.
He said I'm
I'm gonna pass out.
Don't turn. You can't turn that shit off for like
He
a
said
good.
she hope y'all enjoy
couple
your
weeks.
gifts.
But the crazy thing is, if that does happen, I just don't have to turn the power on. Plug it out immediately. If you don't turn on the power, just wait for it to dry.
You don't
Yeah.
know how
It's
long
the
it's
ele-
sitting?
Yeah.
It's the electricity
It's
once you turn
send
on
the
that
circuit
fries
through,
the
it fries
circuit.
the circuit. Yeah.
If you don't do that,
And you
you
dry it
just gotta
out.
wait a long ass time, make sure it's bone dry
Yeah.
before you plug it back in.
Okay.
It's when you press the like you said,
The
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 electricity
circuit
goes
goes
through it.
through.
When it mixes with the water, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
The resistance on it, the bus.
It's over. It's over.
It'll short out.
Retro audio, you say it's not good.
Yeah.
Yes, we have retro.
Yes,
We're about to close
we
down
definitely
as well.
appreciate you, bro. We so appreciate
Um,
you. Said, don't worry, Morning. I got something for you as well.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Yes.
Anything to say to wrap it up? Last show of the year.
I'll start with you. Like you
Oh,
just say a couple
W
words.
Stream. That show New Year had a good time. I'm looking forward to next year. I'm going to be coming for y'all. It's not even game. I'll see you guys next week.
Yes. Kicking it to your guy here. Everyone's favorite DJ. It's been such a fun ride coming into the new year. We already had 1 year anniversary for the Game Lounge. So I'm very thankful that we made it the full year. So let's clap that for sure. And 2026 will also be the year little CJ arrived. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. He's definitely going to be here.
Absolutely.
He's definitely gonna be
And good
here.
and healthy too.
Yes. 10 fingers, 10 toes. We did see the doctor. He told us. I can't say it enough. It's not just a podcast. It's not just
Family
a,
show, man.
It's a show. It's a family show. Without y'all, we can't do this every Sunday. Without y'all, we can't even come up with I literally be in the house fixing shit together. Like, okay, Game Lounge Day is coming.
Yo,
This
facts.
Game Lounge Side is coming. Because y'all are here every Sunday, it gives me pride to want to keep on coming and doing this. The same thing for you because we have this, thing that we already been doing. This idea that you came up with before and now we're putting it to fruition.
Right.
I'm thankful that I'm a part of this idea. So thank you for sure for keeping us
Appreciate
a part of the idea.
Appreciate it.
And again, it's an understatement to just call it a podcast. This is a great show, phenomenal community, and we all thank you guys every single time y'all pop up. So thank you. Kicking it over to you.
Man, that was touching. Might shed a tear. But have no fear.
Uh-oh, here we go.
We're about to drop a prayer.
Let him cook.
So hold your cups up.
Mm-hmm.
cheers.
Cheers.
2026.
Yes.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New
Bars,
Year's.
nigga.
Bars.
Bars. How we end the year on
How
bars,
you-
nigga.
how you
That's how
finish
you
that off?
fucking do that
How you
right there.
finish that
Y'all
off?
didn't even know that was
How you
coming.
finish
I was
that
sitting
off?
over here like I gotta drop a bar. I gotta drop a bar. You feel me?
How you finish that one off? W stream.
I had to
W
drop a
stream.
bar
Yes, that's
the
the
last
thing.
episode of the year and toast it up. You feel me? I had
Yeah.
to drop I feel you, Toxic Cat. Now on a serious note though, CJ the DJ, thank you
Yes.
for help peddling the show and getting us where we at
Mhm.
all this time
Right.
later. To the Queen.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we only got one Queen. And I gotta say
Appreciate you
thank
guys
you
having
because
me.
you made the show step out here.
Right.
It's super.
I was ready to talk.
Not the last one of the year, you right?
Yes, indeed.
But me and CJ's already working on things for next year. We got a lot of special guests coming up next year. We got a lot of big events coming up next year.
Yes.
Big things we got planned. So y'all keep sticking around the way y'all do, and we gonna keep loving y'all.
And once it get warmer, we're going to start doing more IRLs.
More IRLs, more events for the gram, and everything like that.
Yeah.
But y'all already know what time it is. It's your boy, Golden Crush 200, aka